Bro, what? We're so back. Bro, what? We're so back.
Is it just me, or is Frank not working properly? He like didn't actually say anything, but something detected something because the like music and stuff got quieter, and I have it chained. I have it like it's set up to automatically do that. My audio within OBS. Oh, thanks for the sub, Andy. Oh, I think it is just me actually, because I can't hear. I didn't hear the alert either. Interesting.
Check 1, 2.
Yeah, what's up?
Okay.
I'm ready, as you tell you. I'm already I'm live on my side. I stream from OBS on my computer. Like yeah.
You're gonna do what now?
I'm just warning you. I'm already live on my side. Because I stream from my computer. I'm just capturing the window.
Oh, okay. All right. About a minute and a half.
Sure.
I'm still posting everything, so give me a second. I'm gonna put you in the back for now.
Why can't I hear the alerts and stuff? Can you go back to that Nathan Robinson video since you didn't finish it last stream? Oh yeah, the current affairs one. We can do that at some point for sure. Yeah. Did you guys hear the alerts?
We're so back.
Interesting. I don't know what the hell is happening because I don't know, whatever. You guys can hear this and that's what matters, right? Okay, but welcome back everyone. Thoughts around myself you in here. Ryan, obviously, momentum was in chat before I even started. We'll get started pretty soon here. The fucking Spin City retard, you know, for whatever reason, is really interested in talking to me about the Shrimp Welfare Project. Give him time, he's just a baby. That's true. Oh shit. Incredible. Oh, it's so loud. Oh my god. Chat, is that real? Chat, is this Gronk? Is this AI? Chat. Quincy Tarantino direct this intro. Yeah, obviously. Are we just gonna... We're just gonna sit on the screen? What are we doing here? Riveting content. This is why you come to Non-Fun.
All right, everybody, we are here. I've got non-fawn shrimp fucker back in the back.
Yo, Tesco Johnson, thanks for the sub. I appreciate it.
Ready.
This little
Hell yeah.
This little nonsense is about save the shrimp. Save the shrimp population.
I'm gonna refresh the alerts.
And the
See if I can hear them.
euthanization of shrimp. So let's welcome Non-Fawn to the stage right now. Non-Fawn, good evening, sir. How?
Yeah, good evening. What's up?
Good evening. So let's get right down to the brass tacks of the stupidity that you support. Tell us about the shrimp population and the shrimp whispers that you so eloquently advocate for. So give us a little history.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Typically, shrimp are killed in a pretty horrible way, and there are like a massive number of shrimp killed every year. It's like somewhere between like 440 billion and 700 billion farm shrimp are killed every year, and typically they're killed in what's called an ice slurry, where they're essentially buried alive in ice and left to like freeze and suffocate over the course of about 20 minutes it takes for them to die. You know, very likely a pretty painful, stressful death for them. And then the conditions on a farm as well are typically not good. So like one practice is relevant here. It's called eye stalk ablation, where like female shrimp will have their eyes ripped out or whatever, or crushed because it makes them more fertile. And that, you know, probably not a good experience for the shrimp. I think the evidence we do have points to shrimp being able to suffer to some degree. And, you know, the kind of most modest position is that I think it's just, you know, very good to spend a low amount of money to prevent a large amount of suffering. And I think the Shrimp Welfare Project does that because like the number of farm shrimp is so huge. The Shrimp Welfare Project, essentially, they work with like farmers to give them stunning machines, electrical stunning machines that stun the shrimp painlessly before they undergo the ice slurry. They make sure they don't do like eye stalk ablation. And then they also work with certain like grocery stores and stuff and retail brands to have them essentially commit to only buying like the humanely killed shrimp or whatever. And because of how many shrimp are killed every year, it's very cost effective. So a single dollar given to the Shrimp Welfare Project prevents about 1,400 shrimp per year from undergoing this painful death. And roughly, machines are going to last 10 years ish. So a single dollar is is essentially equivalent to 14,000 shrimp in expectation being given a much more humane death. And I think it's a very good way to spend your money. And you wanted to talk to me about it because you seem to think it's very stupid.
It is very I can't say that it's stupid. I think it's the most absurd thing that I have ever heard in my life. Just seriously, honestly.
All right.
And you know, this isn't going to be the complete slosh panel where I think you're the stupidest person that I've ever met. It's not going to be. It's an actual intelligent, sort of intelligent conversation. So let me ask you something, Bonehead.
Mhm.
Do you eat seafood? Do you eat
So
any seafood?
I don't.
Any
So
seafood?
I personally am vegan, but I think you could take any number of positions on
That explains your
on
size.
whether or not.
Yes.
Sure, I think you could take any number of positions on, you know, whether or not you should be vegan, right? I think a non-vegan could support the Shrimp Welfare Project as long as you think that A, animal suffering is to some degree morally relevant, B, that it is good to prevent large amounts of suffering at low cost, and 3, that the Shrimp Welfare Project does in fact do that. Then I think that you are you can take any number of other views on our more general obligations to animals, but still contend that the Shrimp Welfare Project is good. Do you agree with that?
Well, I actually don't. I think it's the
You don't
most
agree? Okay.
absurd. I think this is the.
Well, I'm
most
just asking.
absurd-
I'm asking. You agree it's not a necessary position for someone to be vegan, or for someone to hold that we have like much
Oh,
broader
I mean,
commitments to
we live in
animals?
the United States. We live in the United States of America, right? Do you live in the
Mhm.
United States of America?
I do.
Right. Okay. So that's choice, right? That's your choice to be
Well,
vegan. That's your choice.
right,
not
but so number one here,
choice.
I agree that things are choice, but number one, obviously someone can make immoral choices, right? Like I'm not and any number of things are like legal and it's your legal right to do or whatever, but you know are immoral. I don't think cheating is illegal in most cases. Some states have like adultery laws in the books, but
It's not.
I mean, generally it's not, but you know, I think some states do technically still have adultery laws in the book. But regardless, you know, I still think it's immoral to do that. But my point there was simply that I think I'm starting out at least with what I think is a very the most modest case for it, which is that you know essentially it's very good to prevent large amounts of suffering at very low cost, and I think the Shrimp Welfare Project does in fact do that. That does not entail any other position about like what our kind of broader obligations to animals would be and whether or not you have a more obligation to be vegan.
Okay. So take me back into history real quick. Just oblige me for a second. When did people start eating shrimp?
I don't know, but I don't see how it's particularly relevant.
It's very relevant because obviously they're being killed, right?
Yeah.
Eat. They're
Hmm.
not eating them. They're not eating them alive, right?
That typically no.
Okay. Typically, no. So, do you know how they were put to rest, if you will, for
Yeah, just
back
explain.
then
They're
until now? They're
oh
put in ice, right?
now yeah nowadays they're put in ice at like mass scale. I would imagine historically we used to do more. We used to do more like catching wild shrimp rather than farming them. But I don't see how essentially any of that is particularly relevant, right? Like certainly I don't think.
Very relevant.
No, so I don't think. I don't think like
I did read-
what we historically. I don't think.
did
Could I
read
just finish?
I did read their whole money grab because that's what
Right.
it is. It's a money grab.
It's a nonprofit. Who is getting the money?
The executors of it.
How much? We can Google how much they get paid. How much do you think that they're going to get paid?
Please,
It's a
please.
it's a very small team.
Oh, it's a very small team, and tell me you're part of this organization. Obviously,
I'm
you
not.
have a shirt. Then why would you have a shirt that says it?
Because I support the organization.
It's a what?
I support the organization.
So you obviously have given them money.
Yeah.
Right. So we could agree that you're a part of the organization if you've donated to it.
No, I don't think that. No, absolutely not. I don't think what people take part of the organization to mean is not donated money to them. Like, I don't think I'm.
So this organization. So this organization.
But wait. Hold on.
Save
Just
the
on.
dolphins, save the
True.
manatees.
No, I don't think.
Seaweed,
Right. So just to be clear,
right?
I don't think. I'm gonna respond to your earlier point. I don't think like any the historical point is like morally relevant at all. Right. I think. What humans did historically does not necessarily mean that our actions there were moral, and I think that just because let's suppose that the welfare of shrimp has improved, which I'm not sure that it has, because I think probably dying at mass scale in the way they do now is worse than they died previously when we just like caught them rather than farmed them. But suppose it is the case that their welfare has improved, that doesn't at all contradict the point that I think, one, the evidence points to the fact that shrimp can suffer. Two, there are currently shrimp suffering at mass scale. And three, you can spend a very low amount of money to prevent a large amount of that suffering. And I think that's just a morally virtuous thing to do.
Okay, so let's go. I'm sorry. This is laughable to me. So wouldn't you say that this organization, is just like save the manatees in Florida?
No, but
dolphins, save the seaweed. Yes, there is an organization out there that says seaweed is not edible. It shouldn't be farmed and all this other stuff. And there are actually activists out there that go stand in front of these places and
wait, that's fine. So I just want to be clear. Do you agree that it is the case that like it's not particularly morally relevant how humans treated shrimp historically, or how the welfare of shrimp was historically?
Not, because people have been eating shrimp for tens
given
years.
I think if people have also been raping each other for thousands of years, but I don't think that's.
You have to be careful of TOS, please.
I'm pretty sure you can say that, but they've been essaying each other for thousands and thousands of years, right? I don't think that makes that moral. There are a ton of immoral activities that we've been doing for our entire history. I don't think that entails the morality of it.
Would you say that your vegan ways would be for, or would you say your vegan ideology, because that's what it is, it's an ideology and it's a choice, we've established it's a choice, would make one, or make yourself think that it is not morally okay for the safe euthanization of shrimp or any other animal or mammal or whatever that you do not consume?
I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. So again, I think you can have any number of positions on like veganism generally, or like take any number of positions on how is it okay to like kill happy animals, right? But I don't think that's any of that's particularly relevant to, like I said, the very, I think, modest claims I'm making about it's just good to prevent large amounts of suffering at a very low cost. And I think the Shrimp Welfare Project is just a very effective way of doing that.
Okay. So can you tell me that these are activists, correct? Would you say it's an activist?
I don't think that's, so the people, I wouldn't consider the people like in the organization activists necessarily. Most of them are just doing like administrative work. They have like one social media director. She's emailed me before. We're buddies. We're chill. But I wouldn't necessarily consider them activists. But regardless of that, regardless of whether they are or not, I don't see how that's relevant. And I also just don't think that's responsive. I just don't think that's responsive to my point about.
Now, I have seen videos out on YouTube where these morons go out and stand at shrimp farms and hold signs and all this other stuff. So would you not agree that this is some sort of activism?
I could be wrong. I'm not familiar with any of the people actually part of the Shrimp Welfare Project that have done that. It's possible they have, but
okay.
I like
Just Stop Oil to be a activist group.
Yeah.
Would you consider the libertarians that stand out in front of an ICE building activists or protesters, correct? Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're telling me that you have donated to this worthless cause. To be very honest, worthless.
Well, I mean, that's a claim I'm interested in. I don't think you've substantiated at all why it's worthless. I think you just seem interested in.
I would love to see numbers, how much money these people have invested in Save the Shrimp. I would love to see it. I could not find any numbers because I was.
You can definitely find it if you do. Like, they're a charity. They're registered in the UK, so I'm not exactly
Oh, it's UK. Just stop oil.
Okay, so my point is, I don't know exactly how where to get that data, but my assumption is similar to how this works in the US. If you are a nonprofit, you have to report how much income you get, right? How many donations you get, and you have to be very transparent about that stuff.
United States.
What? No, I would assume that they have to report the foreign income as well, right?
I couldn't tell you that because I don't live in the UK and I do not know what their structure or their capital gains are.
So well, they're a charity, so they're not really going to be paying taxes like that. But okay,
charity in the United Kingdom. So you sent your money or your parents' money or whose ever, because you're young, you're still in college, to an organization that's not even in the United States to support something overseas that does not directly affect the United States.
Well, if your point is just that, so if your point is simply that you shouldn't donate to the Shrimp Welfare Project in virtue of the fact that it does not directly affect the United States and that it is an overseas corporation, I just think you're going to struggle on that grounds. For one,
I'm not going to.
I don't think where the suffering is necessarily means that it's more or less valuable. So I think
get into the crux of it. Let's get into the crux of it.
Hold on,
I am on a time schedule, but let's get into the crux of this.
Uh-huh.
Can you talk? Have you ever picked up a shrimp and talked to it?
No.
So you haven't been able to do that. Do you know someone that could pick up a shrimp and talk to it, and that shrimp could come back and tell you how that it feels?
Yeah, there's this scuba diver. He was interviewed by Alex O'Connor. He gave a testament to his experience with shrimp and having some fun with them. Obviously they can't literally talk or anything, but I think I think that's a
can anybody attest? Who or how can anybody attest to know how a shrimp feels?
So for one, if you just want to know about like people's personal opinion and personal experience or whatever, we actually do.
Opinion.
So
wait a minute, we're not going to personal opinion.
Okay, well, you just asked me like about my personal, about like have I personally talked to a shrimp or whatever, right?
To the shrimp, I want to know right now: is there anybody that can pick up a shrimp and to ask that shrimp, do they feel pain?
So there, again, you're referring to like people's opinions on the subject or whatever. Is there anyone who can do this? The point I was going to raise there is that there's actually there's a survey like from Indian like shrimp farmers, and it's like 95% of the shrimp farmers who like work in the industry in India believe that shrimp are sentient. But I don't think that's the best evidence of shrimp sentience, right? So I think it's true that like we're never gonna understand the exact experience that shrimp have, but in the same way, I don't think I can ever understand the exact experience you have, right? Because it's your experience, right? It's kind of unique to you. You're the person experiencing that qualia. But I think nonetheless, there's evidence that shrimp suffer. So for one, they just have like the necessary. Okay, so what do you want me to send you?
Bring it up. No, bring it up here in StreamYard, and let my audience
bring what up there.
Your proof that shrimp suffer.
Okay. So
I want to see the
can I don't know how to use StreamYard. When you say proof, to be clear, I think whatever I show you, it's going to say that's not definitive proof. You can't ever definitively know for sure that shrimp suffer or whatever. But I think just like I can't ever know that you definitively suffer, right? Because it's your personal experience or whatever, your qualia. You know, I think there are things that are evidence in favor of you suffering. So for humans, you know, part of it is going to be that, you know, I'm a human and I suffer, so I think it's very likely that other humans probably suffer in the same way. But like with shrimp, you know, we observe certain behavior of them. For example, they you know, they will typically like rub their wounds when they are StreamYard's weird. When they are
just hit present, and there you go. All right. So I'm going to put this up on stage. You should be able to see it. Actually,
Wow.
I can make it a little bit bigger. And you can move your mouse up and down.
Sup?
Thanks for the $100. I appreciate it. Patrol, welcome back, Gregory Albright. I saw you responding to me on Twitter.
In fact, I can do this too.
Okay, so this is probably like you know, the most detailed kind of estimate into this type of thing. There's an organization called Rethink Priorities. They do a lot of work on this topic. This is their welfare range of a bunch of different animals. So, you know, some of the things I was talking about earlier with, for example, the fact that, you know, we kind of we observed that like shrimp will you know, rub their wounds when they are injured, but then when we give them painkillers, when we give them analgesics, I think they're called, you know, they respond to those painkillers by showing less, you know, visible signs of their pain, right? So I think that's evidence that shrimp, you know, suffer, and it's very weird that you would expect them to have that response if they didn't suffer or feel pain to some degree. And this Rethink Priorities report, like I said, takes into consideration a bunch of different studies like those and tries to weigh the evidence. And this is their welfare range estimate, essentially, of you know, with humans as the baseline, how sort of the relative intensity at which certain animals can suffer. You can see here shrimp are 0.31, essentially meaning this is the median estimate, meaning the median estimate for the relative intensity of their suffering is about 3.1% as intensely as humans. And you know, if you just do, again, you know, that's a low number, but the amount of shrimp killed every year is like incredibly huge, and the number of shrimp that the Shrimp Welfare Project saves every year, or your marginal dollar can save, is also really big, right? It's like 1,400 shrimp per year. So if you do the math on it, it's actually essentially, if you take those numbers at face value, which I'm not necessarily saying you should. It's a very hard subject to measure exactly, but I'm not necessarily putting every faith in this exact number, but just taking that number at face value, it'd be like equivalent to, I think, like 46 humans being treated to a painless death as opposed to a painful, drawn out one.
Okay, so going back into the rhetoric, and
wait, hold on, just to be clear, do you agree that most of the evidence we have kind of does suggest that shrimps can suffer?
Not in one bit.
Okay. So did I not just give you?
Because okay, wait a minute. So they put them in an ice bath and they kill them, right?
Mm-hmm.
What the data on the website suggests that giving them some sort of chemical for a fast death or electrocution, right? Because that's
it's electrical stunning machines.
Wouldn't you think wouldn't you think that would cause them pain?
So it's not necessarily impossible, but just like, you know, with humans, plenty of things can happen fast enough that you can't register it, right? Like if I struck you with a sufficient amount of electricity, you probably would never be able to process it before you died or whatever. It is very likely a painless death for them, an immediate death, as opposed to a long, drawn out one. But it's not impossible they feel some pain before they die in that case. But even in that case, I think it's very likely that it's much better than a long, drawn out, painful death. It's just a quick, almost immediate death.
But you would agree an activist group or a person that is taking the money from the quote unquote donations that they're getting is benefiting somehow. Would you assume that?
I don't see how that's relevant to my point, but I think the person who founded the Shrimp Welfare Project has given interviews about this. He just has like he just is an effective altruist. It is just like personally meaningful for him to do this. I think like certainly he benefits from it in the sense that he probably is his job, and also
capitalizing on a bunch of words on a website that is UK based.
Do you think he's lying? You don't think he has genuine beliefs about this stuff?
Well, you can have the beliefs all you want. I could.
Do you think those beliefs could be motivation for his actions just as well as any type of like stricter personal gain?
Any person that is the head of a nonprofit is making money.
Okay, can I get to answer my question? Do you think that his personal beliefs could be a significant motivation for his actions as well as any type of monetary gain that he gets?
I could put a website up and take donations and say and call it.
Okay, so I'm going to ask my question again. Do you think that both with this guy specifically and also just generally, that someone's beliefs about what is moral and not moral could be a significant factor in why they work at a nonprofit and why they do that type of work?
I can't say that their beliefs would be immoral.
I'm not asking whether their beliefs would be immoral. I'm asking whether the beliefs could motivate their actions more than
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So I think certainly it's not good evidence. Like you keep just responding to my points about this stuff by saying, well, he's they're evil activists and they're just in it for the money or whatever, and they're a UK charity, blah, blah, yada yada yada. But obviously I think
that this money that money from the UK has benefited one shrimp.
Can we prove that it has benefited one shrimp?
Prove to me and my audience the benefit of the money that you
I feel like that's what I'm trying to explain the whole time, and then you keep just like trying to go back to this like weird point about activists or whatever.
Believed it, and you spent say $20 of yours or your mommy's or somebody's money to send over to a UK based charity.
Right.
Show me where $1 of that money has benefited one shrimp.
I would guess that your standard is just going to be an impossible standard, because I can pull up videos of the Shrimp Welfare Project giving electrical stunners to farmers. I'm not certain there's video proof of them in use, but I know for certain there are videos about them giving them to farmers. There are reports and pictures that they make about them giving stuff to farmers, and about them agreeing, making, like, for example, Tesco agree to buy only like shrimp that are humanely slaughtered. But I would guess that your standard of evidence here is going to be like just impossibly high, and you're also probably going to rope into it the fact that, oh, you can't definitively prove that shrimp are actually feeling any pain. I would guess that's what you're planning on doing here. So is it like sufficient if I show you like those videos, or
you can show me a video of somebody handing a stun gun to someone? Does that mean that it is humanely used?
Not necessarily, but it's evidence of it.
Evidence of them giving a stun gun or some sort of electrical pulse.
Do you think so? Do you think that like the fact that A, they have the equipment, and B, they have committed to using it is evidence of the fact that they do in fact use it? Or do you think that's just not at all evidence of it?
First of all, let's go back one step. And I said,
wait, can you answer my question? Do you think it's evidence that they
answer the question? I'll answer the question. So they want to put a chemical or give these things a chemical, right? It was in their propaganda. No. Yes,
I don't know what you mean by that. So they
want to use they want to possibly use some sort of chemical euthanasia to euthanize the shrimp.
I'm not read about that.
Farmed and raised and whatever else. Would you not agree that if you gave them some sort of chemical, it's going into their little crustacean body, right?
Would I not agree?
Would
What?
you agree that it would be ingested by the shrimp?
I'm not certain.
You're not certain. But
I don't know what type of. So I'm familiar. I'm familiar. By the way, hold on. I just found the video of the electrical stunning machine in use. If you want to watch it, I'm not certain that this one specifically was provided by. Oh nope, it was provided by the Shrimp Welfare Project. So if you want to watch it, we can. But
bring it up there. How long's the video?
I mean, 4 minutes, but
Okay.
only 30 seconds of it are.
Now, does this video show him giving it to him, or does it show it in use?
Looks to me like they're using it.
Okay, bring it up here.
You can see
Maximize your screen.
I believe that's the stunning machine. It looks like they are loading buckets of shrimp into it. You can see, I believe those are buckets of shrimp going into the stunning machine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Feeding the shrimp stunner,
okay, they're just using an electrical stunning machine. How does this prove that it's any more humane?
Okay, hold on. Just to be clear, this is exactly what I predicted, right? I said I think your standard of proof is going to just now rope in that I can't quote unquote definitively prove that these shrimp are feeling pain or whatever. Do you notice how that's exactly what I predicted? I said I could pull up a video of them actually using it, because your initial contention was we don't even know if they're actually using it. But I exactly predicted that I could show you evidence of them, or I could literally show you video footage of them using it, but then you would just shift to another point of like, well, how do you actually know the subjective experience of shrimp? Like, that's exactly what I predicted.
Do you not understand the debate? It's pushback.
It's not pushback. I think it's I don't want to call it bad faith, but I think it's very silly.
People listen. Save the whales, save the manatees, save the dolphins, save the seaweed.
Mm-hmm.
It's what I'm trying to show you is there is no principle but personal belief, or how somebody else feels, how a shrimp or a dolphin may feel, and they donate millions. I have a
I'm not certain by what you mean by there's no principle other than personal beliefs there. I think people develop their own personal beliefs about certain issues based on the evidence and narratives they see. So I'm simply arguing here that the evidence points in the direction of the Shrimp Welfare Project being a highly effective way to reduce suffering, and that, it sort of is just it's a good thing to do, regardless of even whether or not you necessarily have an obligation to do it. It just is like a morally virtuous thing to do, to donate to the Shrimp Welfare Project.
Right. So you read a website, or let me ask this: how did you stumble upon the most stupidest thing that
I think that's entirely irrelevant, but I was told by my
it is not irrelevant.
I was told by my buddy, my online buddy, his name is Sample Text on Discord. I think he initially told me about it.
Okay. And I know you couldn't allude to how he came upon it.
He read Bethan's Bulldog post.
Oh, okay. So propaganda. So then,
I mean, I know Bethan's Bulldog. I've spoken to him a few times. He does not just write propaganda. I think he's generally pretty well reasoned on those issues. I think he generally does research on issues of animal welfare. I don't think it's just propaganda or anything, right? But I've also watched, I've debated people on the Shrimp Welfare Project before.
The total point of this. He told you about this, so you went on to their website, because that's where the shirt came from, and you read a sob story. That's what you read, or propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
And you believed it, right? Because you have to have some sort of belief. I mean, I can sit here and read propaganda and open my wallet and donate thousands of dollars if I wanted to, right?
So you could. I would assume you have the capacity to do that. But
I do.
okay, great. I wouldn't consider it propaganda again. I think the evidence on it is like pretty well.
What would you call it?
I would call it evidence.
Evidence of something that you have not seen with your own eyes, right?
I think that is higher quality evidence than I could see with my own eyes. Right. Like I don't think my own eyes are well suited to determine whether or not shrimp are sentient or not. But I think a bunch of data on the behavior of shrimp is more well suited to determining that.
Okay. So again, you have not seen any of this with your own eyes.
Okay. So total non-response to my point there. But just to be clear, you wouldn't even support if it was the case that shrimp did suffer. It's not even clear to me that you would support the Shrimp Welfare Project then. So just ask, like, if you just assume the belief that shrimp can feel pain and that the Shrimp Welfare Project does indeed, effectively reduce a lot of their suffering, would you then think that it is morally virtuous to donate to the Shrimp Welfare Project, or would you still be against it? Because I think it seems like you'd still be against it.
Let's take this to a human factor. Let's take this to a human.
Can I just get like a answer to my question?
Because it's a rhetorical question.
It's not a rhetorical question. I want to know if you believe.
Let's put a human factor.
I don't know what you mean by that. I just want to answer my question.
Do you think a veteran that is living on the street is suffering?
Yeah.
Oh, you do.
But that's a question about this. So this is now a question about cause prioritization, right? Which we can get into. But what I'm asking you first is
get into the prioritization.
Right, but I think so it seems like, I don't want to assume your belief, which is why I'm trying to ask you a question. It seems like, one, you don't believe that animal suffering generally is particularly morally relevant, and B, that the suffering of people or animals, especially outside the United States or that don't directly affect the United States, are morally relevant, right? So it's easy to understand from those, why you would prioritize the veteran over the Shrimp Welfare Project if you have those beliefs. But
can you send this 100 to
essentially sorry, I got a donation, by the way. I appreciate it, Patrol, but regardless, so what I want to be clear about what your beliefs are, so I know how to argue against them, how to engage with them. So in order to get to understanding your beliefs there, I'm asking whether or not, if you assume that shrimp do suffer and the Shrimp Welfare Project does reduce a lot of their suffering, would you then think it is morally virtuous to donate to the Shrimp Welfare Project?
If you could bring me concrete evidence that, and I'm not going to set the bar very high at all. If you can show me a shrimp suffering, I would believe it.
Okay, that's not what I'm. So I don't think that's. That's not responsive.
High ground. I would take a moral high ground. And I would probably give a gift to someone to better the process. Does that answer your question?
No. So to be clear, absolutely. I think your standard of proof that shrimp is suffering or whatever would just be impossibly high, such that I couldn't prove to you that like dogs suffer, that even like babies suffer or toddlers suffer. But
how do they?
Regardless of that,
tell me how a dog or a baby or a human.
Do you think a baby doesn't suffer? To be clear,
no, not at all. How does a child or a baby suffer?
They can experience. They can experience pain. They can experience to some degree emotional distress. It's going to be more limited in babies than it is in adults. But
wait a minute. Let's go back. What is your definition of suffering?
I would just say like generally like negative qualia.
Okay. So a baby suffers because they can feel pain. They have
that is one type of suffering is like feeling physical pain. Yeah.
Okay. What about emotions?
It's going to be more limited in babies than it is in adults, but I still think that babies still have some type of emotional state, right? Like they cry when their mother goes away. That's not like a direct physical emotion. I think that is that is essentially a primitive form of emotion, kind of.
No, that is a form of emotion.
All right.
Say one of your pets passes away.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you feel some sort of emotion?
Yeah.
So you would be so you would suffer because that pet passed away.
Yeah.
How would you suffer?
It would be like a negative emotional experience, right?
Sure, but you would get over that emotion
Sure.
in some sort of sense. Fair?
Yeah.
Okay. So the shrimp being put in an ice bath for that very limited time to euthanize them or to make them able to be processed, that would be just like a pet dying.
Well, I don't think it makes the suffering less bad just because you'll get over it or because they're going to die soon, right? I think everyone has the intuition that they would rather have a painless death than a painful death, and that they would prefer others to have a painless death rather than a painful death, right? I don't think like if a baby was just like, you know, terminally ill and going to die in a few minutes or whatever, or like an old person was, you know, going to die in a few minutes or whatever, I don't think that gives you permission to just like light them on fire, right? Just because they're not going to remember it and they're going to die soon, and because the family will get over it, right? I think it's bad in virtue of the fact that the suffering they experience, right, is bad. And I think the same thing is true of the shrimp.
Right. But we can't talk to a shrimp.
Okay, so that's
we can talk to a baby.
That's just
we can talk to a human.
So you can talk to a baby and they have like a bigger capacity to respond than a shrimp, but I don't think that's particularly good evidence of one, whether or not they suffer, right? You can't really talk to a dog much either, but everyone seems to have the intuition that dogs suffer, right? And there are certainly mentally disabled people. There are mentally disabled people. There are mentally disabled people that can't communicate, but it still seems like they can probably suffer.
Wait a minute. A mentally disabled person still has feelings, still has.
But your contention here is that, yes, I agree. But your contention was that we can't talk to a shrimp, so how do we know that they suffer? What I'm saying is, I don't think that is particularly like good evidence or the only thing we can look at. And my evidence there was that, you know, there are all sorts of things that we do think can suffer that we also can't talk to, right? And that includes some severely mentally disabled people, some other animals that everyone seems to understand can suffer.
Wait a minute. We can talk to a severely mentally ill person.
I don't
talk to them all day long.
You can talk to a shrimp all day long too if you really want to.
But that shrimp's not going to comprehend anything.
And a severely mentally disabled person is not going to comprehend anything.
That's incorrect. That is highly incorrect.
Okay.
Because they still have a brain.
Shrimp have a brain?
No, I'm talking about people. I have an autistic child myself. I can talk to her all day.
Mm-hmm.
She could cry, and I can talk to her and she would stop. Or I could give her a hug. Or I could
to be clear, I'm not saying all mentally disabled people or whatever cannot comprehend stuff. I think a lot of them can. I think even many mentally disabled people who can't like speak themselves do have some can I put it by saying do have some comprehension of of certain words or certain like language things. I think language is pretty deeply embedded within us, but nonetheless, I do think there are people who just like will not have almost any comprehension at all of language being spoken at them. Nonetheless, I still think that they, have moral value and can suffer, and their suffering would be good to prevent. Or even like you could just imagine a person who is just like deaf, right? Like you couldn't communicate with them with language. Well, not with verbal language. You have to use sign language, right? But like obviously they still
communicating.
Well, in some ways you can communicate with shrimp, right? My point there is that you said talking earlier, but
Tell me how you can communicate with a shrimp.
So I think it is possible. For example, we know that shrimp do, in fact.
Show me the data. Show me a human being communicating with a shrimp. Show me.
So I don't have like a video of that on hand, but for one, I mentioned earlier. So I mentioned earlier, like when I say communicate here, to be clear, when you communicate with a shrimp, I agree it's a very like primitive form of communication, right? But we do know there is data on, for example, shrimp like being even having differences in like how much kind of like risk averse they are, right? And they can learn over time, they can respond to patterns, and they will have differences in like how much risk or how much pain they're willing to take for like a given reward. So there is
talking about patterns of breeding, patterns of where they go in under the.
I don't know what you're referring to. I don't know what you mean.
You said that there are patterns.
Yeah. What I said, they can learn patterns, essentially.
What patterns?
As in you can set up, as in like within kind of a lab setting, you will see shrimp understand over time. Like I don't know the exact experiments. I don't have them like memorized or whatever. But for example, I don't know if we've made them like navigate a maze, but that's a test that we do on some animals, or just recognize what time they're going to be fed. Things of those nature. And then also, like I said earlier, there's this again like primitive form of communication or whatever. I just don't think your standard here is like very good or whatever. But I mentioned there's a guy. Do you know who Alex O'Connor is?
Yes.
Yeah, Alex O'Connor did a podcast with some like marine biologist turned philosopher who wrote a book on like the welfare and sentience of underwater creatures. He's like a scuba diver, and he like, I remember watching that podcast, and he was talking about how he like would swim with shrimp, and like I don't know if he said that they would recognize him, but he said that he was buddied with a lot of shrimp.
Well, okay, but you just mentioned a lab setting, right? So they're not in their natural environment.
I think that's totally irrelevant. If your standard is communication or whatever, it's obviously easier. It's easier to measure communication in a controlled lab environment than it is to go try to communicate with wild shrimp. And even there, I presented you like some evidence that you can have like a primitive form of communication with shrimp in the wild. Not that I think like communication is particularly morally relevant. We can imagine any type of any number of ways in which a person or some animal would not really be able to communicate, but would still be able to suffer and have moral value.
Right, but
well, actually, here's a question. Do you think a zygote can communicate? It's a single-celled organism, brother.
Well, I don't know. Can they? I've never tried to.
Do you know what a zygote is?
A zygote. Well, okay, what's a zygote then?
That's the single-celled organism created when sperm meets egg. So for like first stage of development of a fetus.
Oh, a zygote. Okay. All right. At that point, no.
But I think that you would probably still believe that zygotes have moral value, right?
Communicating with the mother that has the zygote in her womb.
But I think you would consider the zygote to be morally valuable in their own right? Certainly they're not. The reason a zygote is morally valuable to you is not because they are within the body of a mother. I think they would also probably still hold that. I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but like if there was a zygote, in a tray or whatever, that also has moral value, and you shouldn't just like kill it for no reason.
Absolutely, I'm pro-life. I
right.
don't think any.
So clearly they can't have moral value. I think I just demonstrated there. The zygote can't have moral value only in nature of being in a mother's body, because the mother can communicate, because you agree that they would have moral value even outside the mother's body, even just in a like tray, so.
Well, there is value to having children, correct?
That questions the question's too vague to be that meaningful to me, but I would just
it goes to your mental state. So is there a value in having children?
Again, the question's a little...
Answer the question.
I don't think it's intrinsically morally valuable to have or not have a child. I think
looking at your moral view.
My moral view is that in the world we live in now, it's generally probably good to have children and to create people who I think are happy people.
Why would you think, in your own words, why would you think that it is a benefit to have a child?
Because creating that child is very likely, at least in developed countries, to live a pretty good life. And, you know, absent having a child, they're not going to get those experience, right? There's a non-identity problem there, but nonetheless, I think it's so speaking of they wouldn't get that experience, it's a little weird. But you know, absent having a child, there's going to be one less presumably happy person in the world, and then probably most people make other people to some degree happier as well. So you're probably going to kind of rob other people of their experiences. But
you're young 20s, you are in your 20s.
I am 20 years old. Yeah.
Okay, so you're in your 20s. If you were to go out and have a child right now.
Okay, but this is totally like not responsive to what I said. So just to be...
Wait a minute. Do you think you will suffer?
I'm not... I mean, I'm not certain on net. I'm not certain on net. I'm not certain whether I would or not, I guess, but I would suspect, yeah.
Okay. And would, at this point in your life, in your young libertarian views, how would that child have a good life, or would that child suffer?
I think they would have a net good life. I think they would be ways in which they would suffer. I think they would be more offsetting ways in which they were happy. Would what?
Would it be a society?
Would what? Which? I mean, they'd both be a little bit of both. But it's not. But none of this is, I don't think, relevant like at all. I just want to be clear. The point I was throwing about the zygote, right? I think you could take any number of views on this, and it's not really going to affect your view on the Serve Welfare Project or the suffering of animals generally. The point. So the point I was proving there is that it seems like your standard for whether or not like suffering was valuable or whether or not something could suffer is whether or not that thing can communicate with us. But then I pointed out, well, you believe that zygotes are morally valuable, and they have no method of communication, right? They're not even sentient. So clearly something else is.
Okay, go back to the zygote thing. So how can you tell, or how can somebody morally sit there and tell me or tell you on a website that a zygote is suffering?
Well, I don't believe zygotes suffer, so I don't believe.
Morally and consciously assume that to be correct.
So I don't believe zygotes suffer, right? But the evidence for that you could look at whether or not they do is whether or not they have the structures that seem to create suffering in other animals, right? Like a brain, like a neurons, like a central nervous system, right? And some other qualities. You could look at their like behavior in response to stimuli. Zygotes are not going to be capable of really doing any of that because they're a single cell, right? So there's no other single cell organism that we believe can suffer. So like I think all those things are against them suffering. But to be clear, this is a critique of your view here, right? You told me that you believe zygotes have moral value. Certainly, if you believe that, you must believe that something other than communication is what gives them moral value.
I'm a child, a living, breathing organism.
Right, but now you're referring to like the potential of something, and that's fine. You can appeal to that. I'm not going to take issue with that here. But now you'd be referring to what gives something more value is also it's not only their ability to communicate, but also their like future capacity to do so.
Okay, the future capacity of a shrimp is to eventually be caught and prepared for human consumption.
But I just want to be clear: whether something can communicate or not is not a sufficient or necessary condition for you to give something moral value.
but it does have a value.
What I recognize, you believe zygotes have a value, which is why I'm saying it seems like then you're appealing to something outside of communication. So it can't be the case that it's a sufficient or a necessary condition for to give something more value, just on the basis of whether or not they can quote unquote communicate.
Well, what I'm trying to figure out here is
I don't know why you can't answer my questions. You just like dodge my questions all the time.
I'm dodging your question for a reason. What I'm trying to figure out is how this research is done to make creative ways of euthanizing a shrimp or any type of animal that would be morally better.
I mean, I feel like I've given some examples earlier, but it doesn't seem like to me that you're genuinely interested in that question.
You've given me electrocution.
Yeah, but I also give you examples of, for example, what we observed the behavior of certain shrimp species do when they are wounded, and how the response changes when we administer painkillers to them, right? Like that's an example of a type of some research that is done on shrimp to see if they can suffer or not, that I gave earlier. But yeah, I also feel like you never answered my question with regards to.
Have you been shocked by an electrical outlet or?
Yeah, I have indeed been shocked before, but I feel like I've already addressed this.
Okay, so did it hurt?
Yeah.
Okay, so did you suffer?
Yeah.
So tell me how electrocution wouldn't hurt a shrimp.
Because, well, I'm certain that
in your little research in that little propaganda website and sob story.
True, but this is like saying, have you been pricked before, or like stabbed before, or cut yourself before?
Absolutely. Did it hurt?
So yeah, I'm asking. So did it hurt?
That really fucking hurt.
Did it hurt when you like cut yourself or have been pricked or stabbed or anything before?
Absolutely, it hurt.
So then, how can you tell me that decapitation wouldn't be like painless, or like potentially painless?
I would argue, because I think, I don't know if you know what I've done, did for 26 and a half years. I would rather be decapitated than shot, stabbed.
Okay, so this is not response. So the analogy I'm giving here is that, like, just because a type of harm can hurt you in a given way, whether it be like electricity or stabbing, doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't a way to administer it such that it is painless, right? So I think decapitation is probably painless, right? Maybe the brain is like conscious for a few milliseconds after decapitation because there's still enough blood and oxygen in there. So like maybe, who knows, there's some amount of pain there, but very likely decapitation is like instant decapitation is like painless. But you couldn't really use the fact that like getting stabbed or pricked in other ways as evidence of the fact that decapitation is necessarily painful, right? It's the same principle here. I could electrocute you in such a way probably that you would not feel any pain. It'd just be too fast. It'd be too much voltage. You just die like immediately before you could process things.
But you're missing my point here, and I'm going to bottom line it for you.
Okay.
I'm putting a shrimp into ice, and it dies. I'm electrocuting a shrimp, or I am euthanizing it with electricity. YouTube, okay? I may be able to inject a chemical into the water that would essentially it would succumb to the chemical, right?
Sure. Again, I'm not familiar with them doing that, but sure.
Okay, so I guess the bottom line here is there is no real painless way for a shrimp to be.
But you don't even, I don't know how you think that you can know that when you seem so suspicious of all the other.
According to their research.
No. What do you mean?
Yes. According to their research, electrocution is instant.
Yeah.
But they feel pain.
No, that's not necessarily.
To their research, it is.
That to their research that shrimp feel pain, or to the research that shrimp feel pain specifically when undergoing the stunning machines?
According to their research, shrimp feels pain.
Correct.
So
does that necessarily mean that there is no painless way to kill them? Just to be clear, does that necessarily mean there's no painless way to kill them?
Well, absolutely. So how?
Okay, wait, just to be clear, do you feel pain? Do you feel pain? Do you feel pain?
I feel pain, of course. So
okay, do you think that there'd be a painless way for you to die? Right? Do you think that there'd be a painless way for you to die?
My question: if I were to come up to you and punch you square,
answer my question.
You think you would feel pain?
Yes.
Okay, so
I think there's also a painless way for me to die, right? I think I could, like, if I was just sleeping and someone was able to administer like anesthesia to me, right? I'd die absent like being on a ventilator, and I wouldn't even be aware. It'd be entirely painless.
You know that you're dead. You couldn't tell me. It is an assumption.
What?
It's an assumption.
What is an assumption?
That shrimp feel pain.
Okay, I don't understand how you're not capable of following. Just to be clear, you said that shrimp feel pain, therefore necessarily there is no painless way to kill them. What I'm demonstrating is that you also feel pain, I also feel pain. Nonetheless, we recognize that there are painless ways to kill us, right? You could die painlessly with decapitation, with certain car crashes, with certain, I mean, you could have like a aneurysm and probably die painlessly. If it was fast enough, you could be shot in the head, and probably no pain there. You could be, like I said, lethal injection is probably not really painful.
You seem like you do research on things. So according to yours and their sob story and propaganda, because that's what it is propaganda. Shrimp feel pain. You have not demonstrated to me, nor the stuff that I have researched preparing for this little soiree, because I've done mine.
Mm-hmm.
There is not one specific study that I could find that proves, other than statistics, and we all know.
But this is what I've said this before. Like your standard of proof is just going to be like way absurdly high, because you're not going to trust you're not going to trust any fucking number from like any organization I could like possibly cite you, right?
Is that a charity that takes donations?
If I cite you evidence from like a study that the
scientific research.
So there's a study done by, like, for example, researchers from the UK. There's a study done by researchers from, I believe, like Norway, looking at I think one of them is like a meta-analysis of a bunch of different studies, and one of them is like a more direct observational study. But it seems like you just like wouldn't trust that either. And I would suspect, again, that you would just say you need to see it with your own eyes, and you can't possibly communicate with them. So I'm just never going to believe that they can suffer, right?
I have not seen, and I'll reiterate, I have not seen anything statistically.
And I literally cited you with the statistics earlier with the Rethink Priorities report, right? And they look at a bunch of different studies within that case.
Okay, is that based on their own research, or is that based on scientific proof? That's
based on the research of other scientists. They're looking at a bunch of research by other scientists to estimate the welfare range.
The welfare range. So define their welfare range.
I literally did earlier. Remember, it's like the sort of relative peak intensity of how much the animal can suffer.
Well, I guess my whole thing here is, I could not find anything.
Okay,
that
just because
says
I'm gonna screen share. I'm gonna screen share something with you. I'm gonna screen share something with you.
Sure.
Okay.
Go ahead. I welcome it. I want you to show me concrete
Look, this is a study.
scientific proof.
Eye stalk ablation. Remember when I mentioned eye stalk ablation earlier? So they looked at the behavior of shrimp who got eye stalk ablation and didn't. Each group was divided into two subgroups to analyze the effective treatment with and without, I don't know how to pronounce this, xylocaine or whatever, which is like a painkiller for the male and female. A control group were only manipulated but not ablated. The trauma caused by the treatments, and this is a like species of the shrimp is not like a scientific name, so this is not.
Okay, so
this is not what I want.
Scientific name for a shrimp?
The shrimp is not a the shrimp is not like a defined scientific category. That's my point there. But this is a species of what like might commonly be considered shrimp. Was reflected by behaviors relating to pain, including tail flicking as a reflex response to allow escaping, and rubbing the affected area. Remember what I mentioned earlier about them like rubbing their wounds. In addition, we observed alterations of 5 behaviors. 4 behaviors were directly related to pain and discomfort: non-sheltering, disorientation, recoil, and stooping. And the 5th feeding behavior was related to the hormonal disorder caused by the extirpation of the X organ sinus gland. So, like,
Okay.
is some of this is this evidence to you in any way?
I'm sorry. Say it again. I didn't hear it.
Is this evidence to you in any way that we observe different behavior?
Put this report out.
I don't know. It's these authors.
Applied animal behavioral.
Once you publish it, yeah. Remember what I said earlier, where it seems like again, I literally predicted that like any evidence I could give you, whatever, you're just gonna kind of deflect to like, you know, just not gonna trust any institution I could ever give you. You're just gonna find some issue.
Did I find an issue yet?
You asked who put it out. Applied animal behavior science or whatever.
Dialogue, so I could look at this. So I could look at this myself. You're bringing proof from a non-profit organization, right? You're bringing proof from a non-profit organization that did some sort of study that says basically they can prove that shrimp feel pain. But what
I'm not certain it's even a nonprofit, but
what you haven't done is prove to me that electrocution.
okay, but you want it, but okay, just to be clear, do you take that as the thing I just cited, do you take that as evidence of shrimp being able to feel pain?
I will not concede because I haven't read the whole article myself.
Based on what I read, do you take that as do you take that as evidence
after reading proof?
Okay, so if it is the case that the observed behavior is true, that did really happen, would you take that?
What standard? Okay, let's go.
Would you take that as evidence? Would you take that as evidence
standard of going off of?
What do you mean? What
they're
standard?
Observing, they're looking at it.
Yeah.
What comparison would
they literally? They divided it. So they had 2 groups. Like they had a control group that like didn't go undergo treatment. They said, right, and then they split them each into 2 subgroups, I believe. So they have a control groups were only manipulated but not ablated. I don't know what they exactly mean by manipulated here, but they're comparing the behavior of shrimp who had some, you know, eye stalk ablation done to them compared to those that didn't in like the same lab setting. They're trying to hold all else equal, and they see that the
saying is these people are the leading experts on putting
oh my god
in ice and then stunning them.
I don't know how you're this stupid. I don't know how you can't like track at all what I'm saying. Just to be clear,
they observed it. They watched it. They watched it happen.
Isn't that what you like? Isn't that what, weren't you appealing to that earlier?
But what makes them, the question here is this: what makes them the leading expert on?
I never even claimed that they were the leading experts. You just asked for some evidence of them.
They got their proof somewhere.
I explained how they got their proof. Yeah, what?
They observed it.
Uh-huh.
Who gave? Okay.
Did you learn a scientific method in school, like hypothesis, right? You get to observation eventually.
There's always a comparison. What are they? What they observed? What are they comparing it to?
Didn't I just explain that? The control group that was only manipulated but not ablated.
You're missing it. You're missing it. Non-fawn.
Okay, you're retarded, but okay. Just to be clear, if it is the case,
let me explain this a little better, like a 2-year-old. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If I eat an apple,
Mm-hmm.
and you eat an apple, I'm observing you eating an apple, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's take it back to the shrimp. Or wait a minute, let me take it one step further. I observe you eating the apple in a way that might be better than mine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether you cut it up, whether you just bite into it, right? Now, I'm going to do a little bit of research on that, and I'm going to say, is this the best way to eat an apple? But I'm comparing it to something, right? I'm comparing it to you. So these people that observed a shrimp feeling pain, what are they comparing that?
I have no clue what the fuck. I've explained this like 5 times. So just to be clear,
You didn't.
certain behavior can be taken as evidence of them feeling pain, right? The flicking and rubbing and stuff that they spoke about, right? Different feeding behavior, those things can be taken as evidence of pain, and especially when that behavior only occur. We compare the behavior of shrimp who have been wounded in some way to shrimp that haven't been wounded in some way, and if those behavior differ, that is evidence of them feeling pain, and especially if you give them painkillers, the behavior reverts closer to what the shrimp who have not been injured is, right? I think that is pretty good evidence of them feeling pain. That is, like, if it is the case that shrimp feel pain, you would very much expect that behavior, right? If shrimp do not feel pain, it's kind of pretty weird that you would see that behavior.
How does one know that a shrimp is in pain?
Are you retarded?
No.
I feel like I just explained how certain behavior can be taken as evidence of them feeling pain.
Painkiller. I'm going to give shrimp a painkiller before I euthanize them.
What? That's not what we're talking about here.
Feel pain. How does one know?
What do you mean by no? Can you specify what you mean by no?
This is what the website.
Can you specify what you mean by no? Can you specify what you mean by no?
They can quantify that a.
Can you specify what you mean by no?
Feels pain. So
can you specify by no? Do you mean be reasonably confident in? By no, do you mean 100% for certain? Have true belief about this thing?
According to the website.
I'm asking you. When you say, how do we know shrimp feel pain? I'm asking, by no, do you mean are 100% certain that this is a true belief? Or do you mean can be reasonably confident in? Or what do you mean by no there?
I do not feel that I could be confident enough to open my wallet.
I'm asking what you mean by no. I'm asking, when you say no, do you mean be reasonably confident in, or do you mean 100% certain that we have true belief in? Like,
first of all, I would not give 100% belief into something as stupid.
I'm asking, how are you this stupid? I'm asking what you mean when you say no. Do you mean, are you asking me, right? When you say, do you know something? Are you asking me if I have 100% confidence that this is a true belief, or are you asking me if I am reasonably confident in it?
Do you know that for this to be 100% correct?
So I don't think I know anything in that sense, right? I don't know my mother's name, right? She could.
You gave them money.
She could be. And I call my mom by her. Well, I don't call my mom by her name that much, but I write my mom's name on government documents. She could have been lying to me about her name this whole time, right? You agree that's logically possible, that I cannot be 100% certain about my mom's real name?
Potentially. Well, that is potentially a fact, yes.
So, right. So I think it's reasonable for me to say,
my point
would you say that I know my mom's name?
where I got
Would you say that I know my mom's name, given that it's possible, it's logically...
know your mom's name.
Okay, so clearly by no, you don't mean are 100% certain in, because you said that you hope I know my mom's name, but I think it's impossible for me to, like, know my mom's name.
Any reasonable adult. And you're very young and gullible.
I don't understand why we're talking about this right now. So just to be clear, the entire reason I asked you to specify what you mean by no is because it can lead to exactly the type of misunderstanding. So I think if you say no, as in 100% confident in, I don't know my mom's name, I don't know that I'm talking to you right now, I could be hallucinating, right? I don't know that you can feel pain, right? I think
to a cause that you read on the internet that
can you I don't know
story.
Okay, so like I said, when I try to ask what you, I don't know why you're going back to this thing. I just want to focus on.
The whole part of the argument is you gave your money, or well, probably your parents' money.
I mean, it's my money.
To an organization that you could not definitively 100%.
Yeah, and I write this is retarded. This is why again I'm specifying what we mean by no or whatever. I don't 100% know anything, right? Again, I don't know that I'm talking to you. I could be hallucinating. I think that's logically possible. There's a non-zero chance of that, right? There's a non-zero. I'm not filibustering. I feel like you've talked more than me, and you've also the tangents you go on are crazy.
That you could not tell me for 100% that you believe.
What does that mean? I can
this be a case.
Okay, I don't know what it means. Do you want me to
gullible enough to open your wallet and donate however much money you donated for a shirt or whatever to be 110% plausible that this is even a thing?
So again, I can't 100% confidently know my mother's name, right? I think it's very, very likely that...
Yes, you could.
You don't think it's logically possible for my mom to have been lying to me, or for her to have like misspelled her name on all her documents that I've seen, or anything like that?
That would not in this day and age, the plausibility of that is very, very...
It's non-zero, right? It's non-zero.
I wouldn't say it would be non-zero, but it's damn close.
Right. So by what you indicated to me mean by no, then I don't know my mom's name. I think a more reasonable understanding of no is to like be reasonably confident in or fairly confident in, right? So I'm very confident I know my mother's name. I'm reasonably confident that shrimp can feel pain. And like I've explained like a million times here, I think that certain behaviors of animals generally can be taken as evidence for or against them feeling pain. So I think the fact that you see shrimp's behavior change in ways that you would expect them to if they did feel pain relative to a control group who was like not experiencing the same the same type of mutilation or whatever, right? The fact that if it is the case that shrimp feel pain, you'd probably expect them to do behavior like rub their wounds when they're wounded, and they do in fact do that. And then when you give them painkillers, they do that stuff less often. I think that's evidence of them feeling pain. I don't think that alone is 100% conclusive. I don't think anything could be 100% conclusive, right? Just because I don't think it's possible for me to prove that everyone else is in a pea zombie, right? I don't think it's possible for me to prove that I'm not a Boltzmann brain. But nonetheless, I think it's evidence of the fact that shrimp can suffer, and we can be reasonably confident in that belief. And also, even if you can't, I would hope they would recognize, even if you don't 100% definitively know something, right? Or even if there's only a 50% chance of it being true, if the consequences are really bad on one end, you should still you act in a way that mitigates that, right? Like if there was like a 50% chance that like pressing this button would cause a Holocaust, just because I'm not 100% confident in it or whatever, it doesn't mean like I can just press the button because it's really bad to do something that has a 50% chance of doing something that's really bad, right? You should not be taking those types of risks.
Okay, so the risk. Let's talk about risk. So,
okay, are you going to be like actually respond to that stuff I said?
First of all, my response to it is, you open your wallet you gave money to an organization or a nonprofit organization in another country.
Do you notice how you're just repeating yourself for like the 5th time when I've already addressed like everything here like a million times?
Fact of propaganda, which we all know.
Do you notice how you're repeating yourself and not addressing anything I said? Okay.
You have no scientific definitive proof.
Notice how I literally cited scientific evidence to you and you just don't care.
But there's no control.
They literally had a control group.
They had a control group. What are they comparing the control?
The behavior of shrimp, but the behavior of shrimp when they are wounded versus not wounded.
Shrimp. So when a shrimp is caught, it takes its little flipper. This is what I'm trying to get at. They're taking their little flipper and flipping it up and down because they feel pain.
I think it's evidence of them feeling pain.
But how do you know they're in pain?
Oh my God, you can't be this dumb, bro. We ran through this like 50. We've ran through this like 50 times. You can't. I don't understand how I don't understand how your brain works this way. Do you think if I see someone like crying and like bleeding that I can know that they're in pain?
You can assume it.
Right. So when you say assume, that to me suggests that wait, just to be clear, should I not help them then because I can't be 100% certain that they are feeling pain?
In a normal society, in a normal brain, absolutely not.
I shouldn't help someone who's bleeding and crying just because I don't know if they can feel pain or not?
Bleeding and crying?
That's what I said, is it not?
If you can. That would be more.
If I can? Wait, okay, so why is it morally virtuous for me to help someone when they're bleeding and crying when you agree that I cannot know whether or not that they are actually in pain? In your words, I can only assume if they are.
Are you visually seeing it?
Yes.
Visually.
Yes.
So with your visual analysis, you can only assume. And the first 3 letters of that word.
Those were your words.
Are ASS.
Okay, great. So you, just to be clear, you agree that if you see someone like crying and they're bleeding, right, and they're cut somewhere and like they appear to be in pain, you agree that we can only assume, in your words, that they are in pain. Just to be clear, that is your position.
Correct. Yeah.
We cannot, just to be clear, you do not know that they are in pain.
No, I don't.
Okay. So yes or no, would it be morally virtuous of you to help them in some manner?
Morally, absolutely.
Okay. So you would agree that if it is moral to do that, despite you not knowing whether they can feel pain or not, then it cannot be the case that it is like irrational or wrong of me or in some way to donate to the Shrimp Welfare Project simply because I cannot know whether or not shrimp feel pain, right? It cannot be the case that what makes an act.
I would say in my stance on that is you are an impressionable 20-year-old.
Okay, I don't know. You you backed yourself into. Notice how every time like you're backed into a corner like this, you just kind of repeat the same stuff.
I'm
okay.
You into a corner and you don't like it.
You are absolutely not doing that. You're doing the opposite of that. You are going to very broad, wide-sweeping claims after I backed you into a corner on a specific on a contradiction in your view.
I can only assume that somebody is feeling pain because I can visually see it. Right?
Well, I mean, I think I wouldn't use the word assume there. To be clear, I don't fully agree with that. I think you can be very confident that they are feeling pain if you visually see someone bleeding and crying.
Okay, confidently, yes, I could. So, have you ever went to a shrimp farm?
No.
Have you seen? So, given that said, you have never seen.
Okay, this is retarded for 2 reasons. One, we're shifting between things here. So yes, you absolutely are, because it seems like you didn't. First of all, it seems like you had a disagreement with in principle donating to something or helping something if you cannot 100% confidently.
You do not have definitive proof.
Right. Exactly. You had an issue with that, But what I just proved, what you just,
absolute
but
issue with that.
but you've contradicted yourself, because you said you also agree that you cannot definitively prove or whatever that someone bleeding and crying is in pain, right? That's not something you can definitively prove. You said that you don't know that, yet you said it'd be moral for you to help them. So clearly, it cannot be the case that it is always wrong, or like or like you don't have an obligation to do something merely because you don't know definitively for certain 100% whether or not they're in pain or not, right? That cannot be the case, because your own position that you should help them contradicts that.
Okay, so would you agree that to a normal human being, this would be absurd?
What?
To donate to a cause that you could not visually see.
I don't think that's absurd.
Type of have any sort of substantial moral clarity that it happens. What I think, and I will give you your closing statements.
Mm-hmm.
What I think is, you had a friend show you a website. That friend knows you and knows that you will give, you potentially would give some sort of monetary donation to, or whatever the case may be. And
see, as the allegation, my friend is like manipulating me. Does he have some
sob story, which makes you a weak-minded individual?
That's true.
You fell for the propaganda.
Didn't consider that.
You did.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think I demonstrated pretty clearly in this debate that you're like not capable of tracking conversations. I exactly predicted many of the like errors you would make in failing to track the conversation and failing to be able to go through claims linearly. And you presented no substantial evidence that it is not morally virtuous to donate to the Shrimp Welfare Project. You presented no actual evidence that like shrimp or like can't feel pain. I mean, it's hard to present evidence in the same way for like a negative. I understand that, but I don't think you got anywhere close to demonstrating that like shrimp can't feel pain, or that we don't have an obligation, some obligation, or at the very least is morally virtuous to like prevent large amounts of suffering at low cost. I feel like you basically never addressed that, and you are incapable of even following the conversation, and you just constantly appealed to like the very broad things, kept repeating yourself, kept saying I was 20 years old and fell for propaganda, despite you lacking an understanding of anything.
But you did.
Okay.
You fell for a sob story.
Yep.
You gave money to a organization that in normal sense is bullshit. That is my standpoint. Before I would open my wallet to donate to anything, like I can tell you this much: there would be no nonprofit organization that I would ever donate to, because they capitalize on emotion.
Okay.
And that's what you did. You can.
I really don't think I did that. I think it was very logical in this debate. I think it was very like not. There were certain cases in which I appealed to intuition, but I think
I just showed you how stupid it is.
You definitely failed to demonstrate that.
Story to fall for somebody's sob story.
You literally did not demonstrate
your research.
Okay.
It's just like the cure of cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I am pretty confident that we will find a cure. But would I donate my life savings to something that I may never see? The answer is no.
Wow.
The answer is no.
Inspiring. Okay. Hey. I'm good here, buddy. You can go to your panel now. I don't got much else to say to you, dog.
It's been fun. I hope I have proven that you are irrational, and have a good day.
Yep.
I hope
you too, buddy.
Do it again sometime soon.
I'm sure we will. What a total complete retard. I mean, that is exactly what I expected, right? But like, what a absolute retard. I know he is because I've spoken to him a few times on other issues, like economic issues or whatever. He like totally incapable of like even understanding the claims I'm making or in responding to my like very pointed questions. To be able to linearize, I can never fucking say that word correctly. To be able to go through claims linearly, right? Total retard. Yo, thanks for another $100
I'm feeling
patrol.
spendy because I made 40k on Intel today.
Oh hell yeah! What the fuck? Oh, this is the wrong monitor. W Donut Patrol is well known, non-fun and whale, and we appreciate him. How's your silver doing, Patrol? Okay, one second. I'm gonna get a water bottle real quick. I'm playing.
I have a question. Stop.
Oh, I forgot this video was like super laggy.
You're not running away.
Using which part of the Constitution? Where in the Constitution does
stop.
Congress have the right to pass a murder ban?
Stop. Wait. Don't even answer the stupid fucking question.
He doesn't know.
What was
You're defending your buddy because he doesn't know.
I love this guy, you know.
What constitutional mechanism is there?
Stop running away. Stop running away. He made an incredible point. Name a single.
Roe v. Wade is overturned. You could pass a federal law.
Name a single.
Using which part? Article what? Article is that Article 2?
I'm not
Article
going
3?
to run away. I'm sorry. I'm not going to let this happen.
Because he doesn't know. Stop defending.
Stop talking. Stop talking. Name a single policy.
Ow. I'm just outside of Greenville, North Carolina or South Carolina. Gotta get my caffeine, bro. NC based. Do you have your boat here? Scented mixtures. Bro, probably China. I don't know. Oh, also, the, you done it earlier, which I didn't read. Can you send this out to the shrimp welfare on my behalf? I'll only get 55 of it or whatever. But maybe. Depends on how broke I am at the time when I actually get the payout. Oh shit. China probably. Apparently not. When is Germany? Okay, a little. Italy or France? Could be. Oh, I didn't even scented mixtures. It probably is like fucking cologne and shit, right? I mean, I guess France. They're smelly. Yeah, there we go. Number 2. I'm gonna hit Spain. I'm waiting on parts and season change. It's your money now, base. That's true. Alright, I trust you, Dylan. I'm going to Italy. Ireland, bruh? I would have guessed US, but... why the Irish doing all that? $318 billion. Petroleum, integrated circuits, gold. So... I really don't know, actually. Tanks and armored vehicles, vaccines. It's got to be some European country. 318 billion is quite a lot. I don't even know if Germany has that many exports. I think they do, but it's not. This is not Germany, but. I don't really think it's Mexico, but I'm gonna guess Mexico. Yeah, damn. Which, like, Southeast Asian country has this much petroleum? I'm gonna guess South Korea, but I don't think that's right either. Yeah, damn. Indonesia? Indonesia, I think, is way more petroleum, but maybe I'm wrong. It could be like Malaysia or something. Is it Indonesia? There's no way it's Indonesia. Could it unironically be Israel? Not after I know the location. I thought Indonesia would have way more oil, right? Yeah. Wait, what other country is fucking south west of Malaysia? Australia? I don't even think... Vietnam? No, that's not... Is that even... That's... I don't know where Malaysia's capital is. I think it does capital to capital. Singapore? Singapore would have... Maybe it's... I thought Singapore is like fucking jewelry and shit like that. It is fucking Singapore, damn. 380 billion is... I know Singapore is like rich and stuff, but... I thought it would be too much for Singapore even. Okay. Oh, this meme. Bro, what are we doing? Bro, what are we doing? Bro, another case of... please, goddamn, hire some fucking economist. You on Twitch as well? Yeah. Also, what's up? Yeah, Pirate and Pluto. Welcome back. As well as... There was someone else I missed. Oh. MVT77. Please hire a goddamn...
City.
Economist. What are we doing?
That's because groceries are a basic necessity. But here, in the pet store, you actually do have to pay a tax. And you know what? I got a bone to pick with that. That's why today I'm introducing legislation to exempt pet food from sales tax.
Why? Why do we live in this world where we take something that's so wonderful, the sales tax, okay? Sales tax is actually not administered very well in the US. Like a VAT would probably be quite a big improvement over our current sales tax. Even though in an ideal world they're identical, with the way sales tax is implemented, it taxes a lot of business transactions, which VAT would not, and compliance is probably lower because it doesn't have the same rebates that make a VAT. It incentivizes firms to comply with the VAT essentially, but sales tax probably a pretty good tax, still a consumption tax, but we gotta ruin it with all these exemptions for random bullshit just because we want to appeal to some affordability stuff, dog.
Affordable and help fed some real savings. Because you shouldn't have to choose between putting food on the table and putting it in the dog bowl.
What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? You guys seen that the fucking it's not a clip from the TV show, but I think his name is Tim Robinson, right? You seen the fucking that'll do it meme? There's an affordability issue. Let's get rid of sales tax on pet food. That'll do it. Yeah, I say that'll do it. I think that would do it. It's like, dog. But I feel dead. Non-fun is ignoring my question. Wait, what did I ignore? What did I ignore? When is your next date with that pretty lady you met at the homosexual rally? You mean the girl I approached at the Unfuck America event? She did not follow me back. Did not quite work out. Riz was not there, apparently. Or maybe she's like, I bet she's just not. She's probably busy, probably planning on it, or maybe she's just maybe she's got a boyfriend already. Certainly cannot have anything to do with me. That's impossible. Okay. They're making me talk about this shit, bro. They're making me. Because they're evil. I have to do the Hasan slop. They're making me. I'm forced to. By the way, just to be clear. February 19th, all right? Banger non-fun tweet. I have opinions on optimal healthcare policy that differ from those of Hasan Piker. They called me crazy. All right. But look who's laughing now. We got, oh shit. I'm going to close everything. We got fucking Matt Brunig and Destiny fighting over this shit. I read some of this thread. You can see I liked it. I thought it was good. Essentially, I haven't watched the full thing yet. We could do that. I don't know how much. Do I really care that much? But Hasan Piker was essentially kind of tacitly defending the murder of the healthcare CEO and of the micro looting, shoplifting memes or whatever. Matt banned me from what? Piker's views on theft are bad, but they really do pale to comparison to his views of murder. That the important thing about Brian Thompson's murder is that healthcare CEOs are engaging in a tremendous amount of social murder due to the structural violence and poverty. Suboptimal policy and business decisions have costs measured in human lives. But if you use the standard, you could easily have done something different to save a life, and you didn't. Being a person in the US with 10K and not donating to GiveWell is social murder. True, by the way. You cannot run a society in which you treat being somewhere indirectly upstream of a legal suboptimal system with preventable deaths as murder. In a very literal sense of it makes it understandable, even sympathetic for someone to execute you in the street. And Piker's take it as much is very much that it makes it understandable and sympathetic. He thinks that it is reasonable, that it does not reflect some wider acceptance of murder to accept Thompson's murder because Thompson was that bad. We got Bruneg. I missed the end. Did Fawn call him the F slur? I called him the R slur a few times closer to the end. You might have heard that part, but yeah. I gotta get my foot pedals. I think you're pretty clearly misrepresented Piker here. He was asked to theorize why some people reacted to the killing positively, and his theory is that they did so to discuss due to the discuss with health insurance sector social murder, which is a well-defined term of art. Can we find us on stream from the day when Luigi was killed? Or sorry, not when he killed the CEO. I think the exact wording here is somewhat I don't want to say not defensible in the sense that I think it's the view it's defensible, but defensible in the sense that it's true in this New York Times thing with the exact wording he used. I don't think it's clear that he was personally celebrating it or anything, but Hasan absolutely at best does not give a shit about the fact that the CEO was killed. And that's evidence from statements he's made in the past, and I believe statements he made even about Luigi on his stream. When you feel this much anger and it doesn't feel like there's hope for it to be changed in a regulatory way, I think that's when you get things like Luigi Mangione, who is accused of killing the CEO of United Healthcare, and there being a outpouring of glee for murder online because it feels like finally someone can actually do something about healthcare. I think 41% of Gen Zers felt murder was morally justified, but it's scary to be in a society where people feel that murder is morally justified, and I'm curious how we tread that line. Yeah, Frederick Engels wrote about the concept of social murder, and Brian Thompson, as United Healthcare CEO, was engaging in a tremendous amount of social murder. The systemized forms of violence, the structural violence and poverty, the for-profit paywall system of healthcare in this country, and the consequences of that are tremendous amounts of pain, tremendous amounts of violence, tremendous amounts of death. Which obviously, shocker, I have opinions about the state of U.S. healthcare that differ from those of Hasan Piker. I think any healthcare system is like going to have trade-offs, and because it's healthcare, that is going to, you know, be measured in pain and suffering and death or whatever. But it just is like not the case that U.S. healthcare is overwhelmingly bad, or even that like you know, it is obviously we have a private system, so in a sense it's paywalled, but like there are a decent amount of, they're not perfect. I would reform them. There's a lot of changes I would make, right? But you know, it is the case that a lot of poor people and old people do get their medical care paid for or subsidized by the government. In fact, like a majority of medical spending in the U.S. is done by the government simply because we, you know, the people who have the most expensive medical care are old people and poor people, right? Like they're the ones who get the government assistance. I feel like Hasan doesn't understand cause and effect. I don't think he understands many things. Or he's not put effort into understanding them, at least. I think he has the capacity to. Now, it's a fascinating story for me because Americans are very draconian about crime and punishment. They're very black and white on the issue, and yet, because of the pervasive pain that the private healthcare system has created for the average American, I saw so many people immediately understand why this death had taken place. Even before they knew who the shooter was or what motive was, we had universalized his pain so much that virtually every American has a similar experience, a shared experience, where they have a loved one who spent their last days, instead of spending time with their family, spending it on the phone, talking to a healthcare provider to maybe get a little bit of economic respite, so they don't carry on medical debt for their next generation, for their next of kin. That's a harrowing process for a lot of people, and for them, that is murder. And for them, that is murder. For them, that is torture. And that is the reason why I think the reaction to Luigi Mangione, especially by younger generations, was not so negative. Oh, I didn't see the Nicholas Echo reply. And yet, Matt Bruno was murdered. I understand why it happened. Why so many people celebrated because he was a man who was advocating for policies that would impoverish millions. Yet, when Israeli settlers push back against the Palestinians, I understand why they do it, because the people are... These are people who have been betrayed by the Palestinians, who have been had every overture piece rejected, and are living in constant danger of an impeccable foe. And like, are they just retarded? This is true though. I'm gonna talk shit to me if you want. Listen, I don't know who you are, Pirate and Pluto, but I do think he's probably... Okay, Hasan Piker's probably a little above you. Is he still friends with Skade though? Hasan? I doubt that ever since he got like reasonably popular, Hasan, I mean, that he would ever really consider himself friends with Skade. I'm not even familiar with them ever talking, but it's possible. I just don't know about that. They seem like the type of people who would have interactions in the past, but you know, Hasan, Skade is not a very popular dude in comparison to Hasan, so. Hasan, I said Han, your chatter. Oh, I just assumed you meant Hasan. Yeah, my bad. I don't know anything about Han and his relationship with Skade as of now. I don't want to like watch all this. I'm assuming the people who care about it have like already watched it. Can I speed it up? Is it on YouTube? You don't know us no more, non-fun. I know broadly many of my chatters, like what community that they are in, or like what other communities they chat in. Like I recognize like some of my chatters I often see chatting like Peace Coast chat, or like some of my Twitch chat especially. I often go to PBG's chat. Oh shit! Thanks for the 10 bits.
What's your favorite bird?
What's my favorite bird? Shit. I mean, I saw a bird on Instagram today that was singing Noah Hasan Boss. That was singing some shit about, or singing that monster song thing. Hold on. How do I show this without leaking my DMs. This is my favorite bird. These two birds. These are my favorite birds. My friends and I got this running joke about how birds, because bit of a sounds initial reaction to the I imagine I could be like, if I had more time to prepare for the stream I would have like gotten some more clips or whatever, but like I don't care that much. It's my understanding that Hasan one does believe that it was like morally justified in a sense. He doesn't really like condemn Luigi. He might grant he like might believe that he shouldn't necessarily have done it, but in the same way he'll be like, the Palestinian resistance isn't perfect, right? I think it'll be like that. Your favorite is a yellow red-headed Amazon parrot. No, well, like I said, it's those two birds specifically who were hitting that shit. And as my understanding, it's also shown like thirst trap things to Luigi, and I think it's just like, obviously that's kind of a tacit endorsement of that type of stuff.
That's the norm. It's not the norm. And I said this when Donald Trump was shot. That's not normal. And that's precisely the reason why when it's business as usual mass shootings, everybody goes, ugh, thoughts, prayers, whatever, right? But when this happens, they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You can't do that. That's an important guy. That's a rich guy. That's an important guy. That's a guy who has power. That's a, you can't do that. That's not allowed. What do you mean you killed a guy?
Don't you know he's just doing analysis and not justification here?
Damn, United Healthcare CEO. Excuse me. Those are your lords and your masters. You don't.
Oh, then I totally forgot about it. It's just funny to me that we got fucking Destiny and Matt Bruneck fighting over this stuff. Hasan absolutely supports the killing, and at the very least believes the killing is morally justified. The only reason why people are able to dance around this topic is because no one will ask him these questions point blank and force an honest answer. But is it an intentional strategy where people like Hasan Trump will only go on podcasts where they know they won't be confronted directly with challenging questions, which allows everyone else to play the plausible deniability game about their takes. True.
What do you mean? It's really interesting when a peasant rises up against the Lord, because what I realized is when I see situations like that, maybe it's because I cover so much death and so much destruction that like, it doesn't really faze me that much. I mean, I'm always like, that's interesting. It's usually the approach that I have. Now, I didn't realize I wasn't alone. I thought I was alone. I thought there was something wrong with my brain, People took it way further than me. You go on TikTok. I went on TikTok. I saw the news coverage and I would look at the comments and literally... You
told me about this before, yeah.
Oh God, can you kill more CEOs, please? I was like, what do you mean? Hello? On Facebook, on your grandpappy's Kalan's meat. Motherfucker out there celebrating, okay? What is going on? On Facebook, the United Healthcare Facebook account, which is such a funny thing. Like, what the f do you have a Facebook account, United Healthcare? Anyway, they did that. They posted about the death of their CEO.
I think boomers need a lot of healthcare. I think that might make sense.
1,000 smiley face responses, like laughing, crying. Can you imagine motherfuckers named Deborah and Barbara clicking on the post with like the 18 font and their tongue sticking out like and picking the crying my face off laughing emoji to respond to it? 20 defend why insurance companies don't pay claims and what you can do about it by J.M. Feynman, shooter of United Healthcare Chief Executive Brian Thompson wrote Deny Defend Depose on the show casings the word. Yo, by the way, like, don't get mad at me. I don't want to be like inappropriate here, but he looks kind of hot, dude. I cannot be the only person who immediately went, wow, clearly this guy has interesting style. And also,
it is on YouTube. I don't know if I care. I'll break my sobriety when it's on goes, but I'm not saying it's a good thing. That's base. That's valid. I'll do the same. Although, I guess technically, so where it just happens that
nice to be able.
I've never done it in the first place. So. Listen, I think one, it's pretty clear to me. It's the same type of stuff. Hasan has like done this before with Israel Palestine stuff, where he'll say it's analysis, not justification. Like, I'm just saying, descriptively, it is the case that the Palestinians are being colonized, and that creates resistance groups, and the resistant groups aren't perfect, but it is true that they are resisting a colonization effort, like stuff like that, where like obviously there's some pretty clear implications there. I think reasonable people would understand means that like you think it is morally justified for them to engage in whatever resistance activities, right? Even if you say the resistance isn't perfect and that maybe he doesn't believe that rapes or targeting civilians specifically is morally justified, although he said some iffy things about Israeli settlers in the past as well. It's the same type of thing where we can play these games about analysis, not justification. And I don't care to watch all that unless people don't really want me to, but it's also just important insofar as there's social murder or whatever, which obviously, like I said, I have disagreements with Hasan about the state of U.S. healthcare and how good it is. I think bright line norms are important. Mentioning Zaya before October 7th having banned everywhere on Twitch. I mean, I don't know what you were mentioning about it, but like my Twitch themselves only got more strict a little bit after October 7th. You were able to say quite a few things. Tweeted earlier, I think the Scott Alexander take here is just correct. There's like a post of his about why you should vote for Kamala Harris. Consider that just stop oil protesters who throw paint on art. I believe these people are bad, but you might say these people are fighting fossil fuel executives whose terrible decisions have killed hundreds of thousands of people through particulate pollution and yet may kill orders of magnitude more through global warming. Surely this is worse than ruining one picture, which can probably be restored later anyway. So how can we put the paint throwers in jail while letting the fossil fuel executives go free? Actually, we can do this very easily because the paint throwers broke the law, and if fossil fuel executives didn't. Unless you're the dumbest sort of naive consequentialist, you punish people who have violated bright line norms, not people doing stuff you think is subtly damaging, even if the subtle damage may add up to more harm than the bright line norm violations. You do this because it's the prerequisite for having civilization at all. Everyone disagrees on what's subtly damaging, but everyone should be able to get behind protecting paintings. If people come together and form institutions to prevent bright line violations everyone agrees on, and you pervert them or to fight for your preferred battle against subtle damage, eventually those institutions lose credibility, and you can't do either. True alert. See the new Chelsea debate? Oh yeah, I saw you say this when I was debating. I've not watched it yet because it seems like a lot of it is did you like your own tweet? I like most of my own tweets. It seems like a lot of it is stuff I don't care about as much, but I saw him go in WIC. I was in math class and like I put on my phone and I saw it and I DM'd him like, bro, you should have told me you had a WIC TV debate. I was hyped for it. I was hyped. But it seems like there's mostly some bullshit about arguing to what degree communists are co-opting the Democratic Party. It's Kraut versus Charsky, yeah, that's all. Which I also think that it seems like I know Sample Text watched it, and I was talking to him, and Charsky, obviously, I've spoken to him as well. I expect that probably, actually I have it right here. I expect that like Kraut is not the type of person to debate in the way Charsky does. I would expect Kraut to not be able to contend with the sort of narrower claims and like linear claims and that like Charsky I think will lay out. Low level topic though, Charsky let Kraut lay out trash args and that would become the discussion topic. Should have put high quality args down and have Kraut respond. Yeah. I mean, not, I'm sure given the opportunity, Charsky might have done that, but I think how much of the debate was just like about the Democratic Party and not about like the actual sort of principles of whether or not communism is good or not. Okay, I want to briefly comment on this one little thing here. This video is like laggy as fuck, but I was watching this when it was live, and I got fucking triggered.
Point USA chapter here. Yes. Okay.
Oh, so the audio is fucked.
Respect, no disrespect.
Yeah.
I expect more from Berkeley students.
See Andrew Wilson versus Pisco on Twitter. Yeah, I watched a little bit of Pisco stream talking about Andrew Wilson blocking him and over that debate prompt dispute. I thought that was kind of funny. I like funny since Andrew Wilson is like just kind of clearly being retarded there. I might try to organize. I'm organizing the Ryan Malay versus Lance Bush debate on moral realism. I might try to organize Pisco versus Bethan's Bulldog maybe debate on moral realism as well, just because I feel like, you know, I'm not sold one way or the other on moral realism, but it seems to me, I think Pisco probably thinks that moral realism is like way closer, like requires some like the precept stuff that he runs into a lot more, and I think there are probably better defenses of moral realism out there that, you know, like Bethan's Bulldog could do, or someone else. I don't know who the best person would be to organize that debate with.
Thank you for coming up here. What would you like to talk about, sir?
So of course your organization is called Un-F America. So I think that there's some
Unfuck America.
Yes, I don't cuss. Sorry. So
You don't cuss?
I know I don't.
Is it a sin to cuss?
No, I just personally don't want to do it.
Well, so when Donald Trump
Wait,
cusses,
I was about to say, are you a Trump supporter?
You should organize Bethan Bulldog versus Synth on socialism versus capitalism. I feel like that they have probably already discussed that.
Okay, I'm going to address
Are
that
you
right now.
a
So
Trump
what I'm going to discuss right now is that. So I think that you guys need to also.
Like, I don't know how. I feel like they also would not like need me to moderate. Like, they already know each other, from my understanding, pretty well, right? So they're in the same circles. I'm not sure that's it would necessitate me bringing them together in the same way. And I would imagine they've already talked at least things pretty tangential to that quite a bit.
So provide like a platform for me to actually like be willing to support.
You're right.
My feelings on Trump are mixed, but what I do say is that the consequences of the current economic policies of Trump's administration are greater than what it would have been under Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, we saw her propose a 25% tax on unrealized gains, an 8% increase on capital gains tax. She was also flirting with increases for the minimum wage, and she wanted to increase the corporate tax rate, which this is completely treacherous economic policies. All of the studies that you can see, there's an economic consensus from Johansson et al., from Arnold et al., from the OECD.
It's nice this guy actually citing. We got actual studies being cited. Okay, we got actual. I'm not familiar necessarily with these studies exactly. It's possible I've seen them before and just don't recognize them based on the name of only one of the authors. But it's nice we got that. I feel like I got so triggered by the responses to some of these things. Should organize a round on Bethan Bulldog versus Lance Bush on moral realism. It's been like 2 years, maybe.
That corporate tax rates among all taxes, among personal income tax, among property tax, they lead to the largest amount of economic negative growth. So and you can.
He actually, I wonder if he's citing the fucking the studies that Kremix mentions. Because I bet that'd be the place he's most likely to see it, honestly.
You even see this in Canada when certain Canadian provinces increase the corporate tax rate, that it leads to high levels of negative economic growth, especially with the unrealized gains tax. The only nations that have done it did it purposely because they wanted to destroy the crypto industry, and every single European nation that's done it, a lot of them have largely gone away from that. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to address the unrealized capital gains tax.
Which, there are kind of positive and negatives to the having a large versus small base with regards to the unrealized gains tax, but most of the like European wealth taxes or whatever were not as narrow of a base as Kamala's unrealized gains tax would be. At least from my understanding, and then very unlikely that ever would have gotten passed. And you know, Kamala Harris, I think they do mention this. It's not in her policy platform. She basically mentioned it, from my understanding, in like one speech. I don't know if America's a terrible name. Let's be real. I don't know. I don't think it's like horrible or anything. I think it's like a little weird to have a swear word in there, just because that makes it hard to do some stuff. But other than that, I don't know. I think. What's it saying about taxes? Fuck.
Industry, and every single European nation that's done it, a lot of them have largely gone away from that. Yeah,
So
go ahead.
just to address the unrealized capital gains tax, that was
Oh, they I think they mentioned this a little bit, but my understanding, she mentioned it like in her like North Carolina like economic speech, like one of the first speeches she gave, and maybe some other speeches, but it was never in her policy platform. Seems like she got a lot of criticism for it and then kind of backed off or whatever. And even if she did support it, even if it wasn't her platform, almost certainly would not have gotten passed. So I would, do the expected value calculation there of like the likelihood that Trump is going to do tariffs, which is like incredibly high, obviously, versus Kamala Harris getting an unrealized gains tax, which is pretty low. Yeah, you cannot profanity is bad for family-friendly branding. Charlie Kirk didn't have swears.
Part of the budget proposed by Biden and Harris all 4 years. She did not run on that. That was not one of her policy positions.
That's right. It was one of her policy positions. Actually, you can look it up right now. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Actually, that was part of it. But what do you think about it? Do you think that's
well,
good?
I think it would affect people who have over $100 million.
That's right. It would. So it's only the most important investors that you're affecting. You're taxing income that hasn't been gained.
But hold on. I want to say, as far as your Kamala would have been worse. We know Trump is bad already. We've seen unemployment go up. We've seen GDP go down.
Oh wait, hold on. So yeah, on this unemployment point, unemployment rate was below the natural rate of unemployment during the.
This point retarded. Okay, and I can't believe they kind of let him get away with some of that stuff.
Biden's administration. If you don't know this, economics agree that should be around 4 to 5%. It was constantly at around 3%. And I think what you're talking about here is
it's not like consensus that the natural rate of unemployment is well, it's kind of consensus. The natural rate of unemployment is like between 4 and 5%. Like if you look at all the you know, Fed's forecasters, like where they assume Nauru to be, it is between 4 and 5%, I believe, but it's definitely not consensus that like one that is a particularly like useful tool, right? There's been a lot of controversy about the Fed kind of relying on that too much. You know, AOC, there's a clip of AOC like blasting Jerome Powell for relying on that too much. You can see Jerome Powell and the Fed themselves saying that like, oh, we are kind of wrong there. We kind of rely on Nauru too much. It seems like the wage price spiral concerns are just like not that big a deal. Maybe we should be less concerned about that type of stuff. So certainly not consensus that we should like force unemployment up to 4 to 5%. And it especially is not the case that like it's good to do that through the mechanisms by which Trump is potentially negatively affecting employment, which is uncertainty from the tariffs and such. The tariffs themselves obviously probably going to have some effect on unemployment. Like that's not the deportations as well. The more restrictive immigration. That's not the mechanism by which you should really be doing it. That's clearly not the most painless mechanism, or even one that necessarily addresses some of the concerns of like a wage price spiral. I mean, I guess insofar as you like cause uncertainty and shift to animal spirits and we create a fucking recession, then I guess you can't have a wage price spiral there. But
is that under Trump's administration last year, like around like November or so, it increased by 0.3% from 4.3.
Oh my God, hold on. I think he literally did do this.
.3 to 4, still within the natural. There's an economic consensus from Johansson et al., from Arnold et al., from the OECD that corporate,
which I believe one of these is the OECD,
tax rates among all taxes, among personal income tax,
OECD. I think if it's like up tax pyramid. Oh wait, they might be. You might not have gotten an OECD one from here. Damn. I still count it as clocking him though. Okay.
among property tax.
I knew. I'm a knower.
Still within the natural unemployment rate. And it did so. Wait, let me explain. It did so because of the labor.
Which I'm actually not sure the current estimate of. Was it, wait, how do you spell it? Is it Nauru? Inflation acceleratory rate of unemployment? I'm actually not sure unemployment right now. It's within their current estimates. Don't they have, shouldn't there be don't they have the fucking... the chart of all the Fed governor's predictions? I mean, this is showing 4.1, and we're a little bit above that right now. We're not like much above that.
Forced participation rate increasing.
Let him respond.
Sure, go ahead.
Again, it's headed in the wrong direction now because
it's lowering now. It's actually lowering.
No, it's 4.3%. It was 4% when Biden left office.
It was under 4%.
Also lowering since when? Like, it hasn't like raised tremendously or anything, but I think for one, you just look at the better better identified evidence of like what the effects of any given policy are going to be on unemployment. I think it is the better identified evidence is just that tariffs do reduce employment, that uncertainty does reduce employment, that like net migration increases employment, right? So you'd kind of expect net demigration, even though it's not clear that we've had net negative migration, to not have any substantial effect on raising employment. Like, you know, clearly kind of but for the policies, you would expect them to be expecting unemployment to be lower. Although, in fairness, the tax cuts probably have some positive effect on unemployment, but that's going to be partially offset by the fact that when you add to the deficit, you're probably going to see more crowding out happen. You're going to see interest rates rise.
Under the natural rate.
Question.
Let me ask this question. Do you think that the unemployment rate, as all economists agree, should be at the natural unemployment rate?
The Federal Reserve
Definitely not all economists believe that.
aims to keep it below 5%.
To see Ethan Mew's miracles debate, I'm not.
This is true, but the point is it's headed in the wrong direction.
It's not. It's lowered from 4.6 to 4.3.
In addition,
Do they only have Excel file? I swear to God that they had a graph of it.
to unemployment, we see GDP 2.1% last year compared to 2.8%
that's real GDP.
We saw 181,000 jobs created last year under Trump.
But bounce back jobs from labor force participation rate. Wait, hold on. The labor force participation rate. The labor force participation rate.
Interruptions, and all you do is interrupt.
I don't think let me just say this real quick. The labor force participation rate still didn't reach the percentage that was at pre-COVID. So Biden got bounced back.
It didn't, but it's pretty fucking close. Now, if you look at the Fred prime age employment to population ratio or labor force participation rate, I think this did get back to like its pre-COVID high. December 2019, 83. Can we watch Nathan Robinson stuff in a second? And you know that's higher now. That did get back under Biden's term, above it, but we did kind of had the great boomer retirement. So I think if you just look at the total labor force participating rate, it is true that never got back to the pre-COVID high under Biden's term, but I don't think it was that far away. Sort of trending down again towards the end of his term, I guess. We went from 63.3 to 62. Not quite 63 ever again. Just finished watching Enoch v. Bush. Very interesting stuff to think about. Oh, what did they talk about? I imagine something related to moralism, I guess.
Back jobs from the COVID after the COVID pandemic.
Jobs 4 years into.
Yes, it still didn't reach the point where it was at in Trump's administration.
These debates are garbage. I don't think they're garbage.
Rates month to month over a percentage increase.
It's been persistently at 2.4% during this administration.
Since the program started in 1967, all because of Donald Trump's war in Iran, and the layoffs are all a result of Liberation Day tariffs.
Let me talk about tariffs real quick.
Clearly, it's not the case that all of them are the results of the tariffs or the other policies he's doing. I think there is a plausible explanation that they are, a result of, to some degree, maybe AI, but to a larger degree, probably just, there's no growth in the labor force because of very low migration and potentially some still lingering effects of kind of overhiring during COVID, which means companies are very reluctant to hire people. They already have a lot of people doing it, but they're still doing layoffs at basically normal rates.
We do not have Liberation Day tariffs. The Supreme Court checked the tariffs, and we have substantially less. Kamala Harris likes
Why
tariffs.
do we have to give
By
refunds?
the way, I want to say, I
Generate
don't
more
like
revenue, we have to give
tariffs.
them
I don't like
$100,000
tariffs.
refund.
You're pointing out something I disagree with Trump with, because I don't like tariffs. I just think that the consequences, when you take a look at all of the policies that Donald Trump is having versus all the policies that Kamala Harris was promoting, did run on. And by the way, American Rescue Plan, that was a disaster. Loan forgiveness attempt, that would have been horrible. And for not, even the congressional analysis.
We're told from MAGA Republicans
Nothing I can do about the video.
that it's patriotic to spend $6 a gallon for gas while our brave men and women are coming home in caskets, and you want to preach to us about economics?
Yeah.
But this is what we're doing here. This is what we're doing here. This is the best we got. This is the best we got, dog. This is the best we got. I think that, it is true that the American Rescue Plan contributed non-negligibly to inflation. I believe that is the case. But probably also contributed some amount to growth, right? Some amount to the fact that our real GDP was high, and Brian Shapiro kind of got TDS, to be honest. Yeah, I've seen some of his other work. I don't like it. I don't like it. But it's not clear to me whether or not the American Rescue Plan was net good. I think contributed maybe a third to peak inflation, and then I'm not exactly sure how much it contributed to growth or the tight labor force we saw during the tight labor market. Sorry, we saw during 2023, 2022, 2023. So left clear to be whether it was not good or not. The loan forgiveness, I think, was probably bad, but the Supreme Court checked him on that, so it's all okay.
Wait a second. You voted for a liable sexual abuser. You voted for a guy.
Okay,
Wait a
now I'm
second.
going to interrupt because it's not about economics.
No,
anymore.
but
There's definitely
it's
things
about
that
where your
Trump
decency
You
is.
said it
That's
wasn't
what it is.
Biden's choice to take the economy after the COVID pandemic, but it was his choice to pass the American Rescue Plan, which introduced $2 trillion into the economy that was already growing, and which led to the rampant inflation. We had 9% inflation under Biden. We didn't have that high inflation until we had an oil crisis in the
The whole world
1980s.
had inflation. Was
Yeah,
Biden
and
responsible for
Biden
the
made it
whole world
worse.
having inflation?
He made it worse because he passed the
No,
American
he didn't.
Rescue Plan.
What was
And
inflation when
inflation-
Biden left office compared to the world?
And when Biden left office, it was at
Compared to the world.
2.9%.
Where were we compared to the world at that
It was
point?
better than the rest of the
Yeah,
world.
thank
Yeah,
you.
that's right. But Biden could have done a lot better.
We
Biden
just-
could have done a
we
lot
just
better. He
proved
could
your
have
point. You know what you're
not
talking
passed the
Your
American Rescue Plan.
criticism is Biden could have done a lot better.
Who are they or who? Welcome to the stream, Mr. Good Time. Listen, we need the counterfactual reasoning here. Like,
By the way, the American Rescue Plan, Oliver Blanchard, and by the way, he actually wrote my economics textbook. The former IMF chief economist, Democrat, condemned it and said it was a horrible plan because of you're introducing loads and loads of money into the economy at a time of growth.
It'll be a contribution to inflation, but you recognize that money.
it is. There were like quite a few. Like Jason Furman was like anti-American Rescue Plan as well. It is true there were quite a few like left-leaning, Democrat-leaning economists who were against the American Rescue Plan. At least thought it was too big. Some of them might have thought it was still not good, but I think American Rescue Plan, obviously in hindsight, too big. Given the situation we were in COVID, I don't think it's like trivial to say it was known, it was not like necessary or whatever. But I think clearly there was influence by the more progressive camp in Biden's, cabinet and council and advisors when making it.
He's also going to be then given back to firms, and it's to ensure that they can.
3 guys. This is IRI. He's a Twitch, YouTube politics streamer. Liberal, does a lot of debates. I guess he streams to TikTok too. He does TikTok debates, but he does more than that. This is David. Don't know his last name. He's mostly a TikTok debater. He makes TikTok videos and does TikTok debates. Another liberal, obviously. These are all liberals. And this is Brian Shapiro. He makes like, I'm not sure how many debates he does really, but he makes like kind of news videos, I guess.
More individuals.
Wait.
I have a question.
Sure.
What would you have preferred? Would you prefer no stimulus whatsoever and Joe Biden leave Americans across this country to fucking starve because you don't want inflation
No, the
to go up?
economy was already growing. Donald
That's
Trump
not
already
true.
gave people stimulus
What
checks
was
at the end of his term,
unemployment?
and economists
Was unemployment at the natural rate?
Did anybody in this crowd get a $5,000 dose check? I did it.
I was going to look up Brian Shapiro.
And conservative economists
Yeah, so
agreed
wait.
that Trump's stimulus checks were beneficial
Did you get
during the time that he
$5,000
passed
dose
it.
check, sir?
When Joe Biden passed it, he increased spending. We didn't have a demand side problem. We had a supply side problem. The economy was growing, and he's giving people excess.
This doesn't make like any sense. Well, I mean, it kind of does, but the phrasing here is it just triggers me.
When Joe Biden passed it, he increased spending. We didn't have a demand side problem. We had a supply side problem. The economy was growing, and he's giving people excess money to spend with.
Saying we had a supply side problem seems to imply that much of the inflation was due to the transitory supply shocks, right? But his argument here is that really it was a demand side problem because we gave people a bunch of fucking money to spend at the same time while there were like adverse supply shocks, right? But that's clearly your issue with Biden there would be creating a demand side shock. They didn't like. See, these are the type of videos like Brian Shapiro does. I guess he does do more debates than I thought. Some of these are like debates, like call-in debates and stuff.
With.
Listen, I can sympathize with that position because injecting money, expanding the money supply rapidly can contribute to inflation. But this idea that it was ineffective, it does. But this idea that it was ineffective and it's not something that we should have done, millions of Americans got back into the labor force because of that stimulus.
And the economists, the Democrat economists. I just
You see
said
how
it.
you don't give
Olivia
a shit? You see
Blanchard,
how you
Lawrence
don't give a
Summers.
fuck? Whenever it comes to the average person-
Also, Lawrence Summers. I think he means Larry Summers, but
Democrat economists said that it was a bad deal. Do you think increasing inflation, okay, sure. I did make the argument that when you inject $2 trillion into the economy that's growing on the demand side, when you have a supply side problem, you put pressure on the suppliers, and that rapidly increases inflation, and that's why we had the 9% inflation rate in the United States, which is drastic, which is horrible. We haven't seen that in 50 years.
There was a supply side issue, but then you want to put the onus on Biden when it comes to the inflation rate. That is crazy.
Yeah, of course, there was that issue. And
You
Biden
just
made
wanna blame
it
Democrats.
worse.
where did it come from? Is this guy from Politics Discord, this dude, or the UFA debaters? This dude is like, I think he's the president of the TP USA chapter here, but he's also or maybe a poli-sci student, trans Larry Summers, but he's also he's not really like a Discord debater, I guess, but he's been on like WIC panels. I think he's debated like Soy Pill before. I've seen him around. I think I follow him on Twitter.
Biden made it worse.
Can I ask you a question?
Millions of
Okay,
Americans
by the way, gains tax. Like, what do you guys think about
I
that?
want to address all those things. You mentioned minimum wage, unrealized gains tax, and the corporate tax rate.
And capital gains.
What's the issue with the minimum wage increase?
Minimum wage increase.
Oh no. I got a needle pill this dude.
Increasing poses more cost to the operation.
He said some cringe things about healthcare too. At the last UFA event where he was debating.
For businesses. That means they have to reduce their hours. Unemployment could be affected, and prices are absolutely affected by it.
Okay.
And by the way, that's in addition to everything else that you're doing to businesses. When you're attacking unrealized gains, when you're attacking capital gains increases, when you're attacking corporate tax rates, that de-incentivizes investment.
So
you care about...
Never going to get passed. Really?
Sir,
other nations.
And they like let him, you know, I think he's mostly correct about the minimum wage. I think he probably, the magnitude, which those things happen, he probably inflates, right? Or he's probably not reasoning from like the empirical studies you have, and he's probably reasoning from fucking Thomas Sowell, Econ 101, praxeology bullshit or something. But they just kind of let him get away with that.
Nations have been able to pass it. Why wouldn't it have been passed?
Because what type of question is that?
And by the way,
How many times have Americans...
Your argument is that it's okay because Kamala Harris wouldn't have passed it anyways. So it's okay that she's economically illiterate.
That is a complete...
The argument is, more formally, they don't put in these terms or whatever, but that clearly you should be voting based on the kind of expected value, right? If there's a very low chance of something worse happening compared to a very high chance of something slightly better happening, you should vote for the, you know, very low chance of something worse happening.
Different position. You just strawman the fuck out of me. I didn't say that it's okay that she's economically illiterate. I can have policy disagreements because I'm voting for Kamala Harris because I care about the rule of law, individual civil liberties, and this country's fucking future not being in jeopardy.
Okay, but you agree that the economy would have been better under Kamala than it is right now, right?
Yes.
Why?
Hold on. I just want to add. You just said she's economically illiterate. Okay, well, let's use that term illiterate. The person who you support said that...
Thanks for following, Mr. Good Time. And then poor Brian, not poor Brian Shapiro. It just triggers me. We just shift to something else.
Hold on. Okay, excuse me.
So it's like,
He said you need ID to buy bread.
it's embarrassing, bro.
Kamala Harris is someone who is a two-time attorney general. You might not like her. Hold on a second. A two-time attorney general, an elected senator, and a vice president. Now, maybe you didn't vote for her for other reasons that you don't want to admit.
Donald Trump's the president.
But excuse me. When you call somebody like her illiterate, when the orange buffoon who you support is the guy who got us into an ill-advised war, and you defend him, and you defend the felonies, you defend... Let me ask a question.
Actually, that's not related. That's not what we're talking about.
I was going to say...
I know.
It's totally, it is totally fair for him to say that, because it's not. He said, like, his claim was that Kamala Harris is economically illiterate and he doesn't want to vote for someone who's economically illiterate. Now, I think there's maybe a room to point out, like, some hypocrisy there, but, like, really his fundamental claim is about who would be better for the economy. And I think it's fair for him to want to focus on that.
Okay, you don't want to defend that. I understand that you guys like just want to index me to be just this huge MAGA supporter.
You support him.
No, I don't.
You didn't vote for him?
I voted for him.
That means you voted for him.
He was running on the tariffs. If you were a libertarian and you don't
Kamala Harris kept Trump's tariffs from his first administration.
They stole 100
also a protectionist.
I like how he says Kamala Harris. I mean, the Biden administration kept some of Trump's tariffs from the first administration. That's true. But, you know, for one, clearly Trump is going to, like, majorly escalate things. Literally Trump derangement syndrome. Yeah, it's frustrating. But it's not even... I mean, you're going to have Trump derangement syndrome, like, be a better debater than this or whatever. At least focus on the claims that he's making. Like, you know, yeah, the Biden administration did not do everything I would want, or everything correctly. Like, I have disagreements with them or whatever. I think Biden probably was influenced by, like, not wanting to kind of look weak in the sense of just, like, unilaterally lowering TDS as based. Well, there's a certain type of TDS that can be based, but not this time. The issue is that when you combine the TDS with, like, the overconfidence and I think just kind of memes rather than, like, some, like, substantive research stuff. But you know, fuck, what's I saying? Fuck.
By the way, I will say, like, you mentioned, I'm
interrupting you.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Correct me. The Biden administration kept tariffs on every single country.
Oh, that's shit. Yeah, he's probably influenced by one, like, not wanting to, like, you kind of look like a weak leader when you just, like, unilaterally bring down tariffs, because that's unfortunately how the, you know, geopolitics of it work, right? It looks like you just, you know, gave up and didn't ask for any concessions in exchange for lowering the tariffs, even though it could be like a, you know, still national welfare gain for us to remove the tariffs. And then secondly, there's probably some amount of, you know, lobbying, rent seeking there. And, you know, once they're there, there's entrenched interests, the donor class, even. I don't think it's it. I want to go that far, but probably there was some amount of rent seeking there that restricted his ability to, or made it harder for him to do that.
Country in the world?
Not necessarily.
That's not what they did. So that's a fucking terrible point. It's completely unrelated.
Hold on.
If you have such an issue with market intervention, because you think it's going to hurt the consumer
this.
and producer surplus, then you must fucking despise Donald Trump. You should abstain from fucking voting.
How much?
But there's a reason why. Hold on. There is a reason why I think.
We got the consumer and producer surplus mention. Let's go. this is economics.
Everybody needs to know the reason why you're so held up on economic policy that is not implemented from a person that lost the election is because Donald Trump's administration is fucking
Wait, do you
indefensible.
agree that Joe Biden and
why.
Kamala Harris both
much-
have wanted to increase the corporate tax rate? Do you agree with that?
Come on,
How much debt did Donald Trump get us in his first go around?
You guys
You
don't
don't want to
answer.
answer that, do you?
Do you agree that she wanted to increase the corporate tax rate?
Hold on a second.
Okay, that's horrible.
Trump got us
all the
eight-
studies. I just told you all the studies. Johansson et al. Arnold et al. Those were 2008.
You care about
2011,
fiscal-
studies in 2019.
do you
studies
care
in
about fiscal
2023.
responsibility?
OECD.
No.
You can
Hold
check
on.
the
Can I ask you
data.
a question?
It is true they wanted to increase the corporate tax rate. I think it was likely that Kamala Harris would have gotten something like that, or at least not extended the TCJA corporate tax cuts or whatever. I think it is the case that like corporate taxes are amongst the kind of worst, most deadweight loss taxes. Now, it's not necessarily clear to me that within our current political system, it's not a net benefit to raise corporate taxes, or at least let the taxes expire, just because I think it's pretty unlikely that we're going to get any other type of tax, and there's a deficit you have to worry about. So you do have to weigh the potential, like, not a corporate tax reduces investment, but so does like the government increasing its debt load, and that raising like long-term interest rates, and the type of like crowding out that happens there, right? And that's something that you have to weigh against. It's not clear to me that it's, on some margin, it's necessarily net bad to let that expire, but I just think there are other concerns that just outweigh that for me. So.
Question.
Canada,
At
when
the
they
end of your
introduced
filibuster.
corporate tax
I
rate,
want to address that. I want to address it so you can shut the fuck up about it. So listen, what was the corporate tax increase in those studies?
the corporate tax increase in those studies, what they showed is that it was correlated to.
What was the hike that they were evaluating?
I don't know the exact numbers.
Like, this stuff is, we know what he's doing here, right? Like, I think it's clear he doesn't have like a substantive response to this, so he just goes to doing what people often do, where it's like, you present some evidence for something, you cited studies evidence for something, and there are cases where it's clear they don't know what they're talking about, and it is good to push them on what the study found and stuff, right? Like, if someone cites that San Francisco Fed study about, tariffs actually lower inflation, right? Like, I know what they're doing, because I haven't read the whole thing, but I've read some of it, right? And I understand what that paper is actually saying, and it is, I think, fair for me to push them to see if they've actually read it and stuff like that. But like, come on, we know what he's doing. People do this a lot, where they're like, I'm gonna find, I'm gonna mine for something you can't determine or can't find, or don't know, so that I can kind of make fun of you for not knowing it.
What I do know is that all the studies, and I can show you right now if you want, agree that out of personal income tax, property tax, this leads to the most damages to the economy. These are the most devastating. And we
just have one question.
Hold on. When you say the most devastating, you're framing it in such a way that if they were to increase the corporate tax rate to where it was before at 28%, we'd see economic devastation. That's not the case. There is losses when it comes to fiscal policy and taxation, but they're typically made up when we get to reinvest in human capital.
Correlated with long-term negative
growth. That benefits
growth.
firms, right? Investing in human capital.
Investment benefits firms.
Exactly.
It's obviously not necessarily the case that the benefits are like net positive, right? Like, there can be a benefit there, but there's, probably diminishing marginal returns there. And then to some degree, maybe the government investment in human capital is just crowding out like private investment in human capital. Like certain investments corporations do are also going to have positive human capital effects. And it's not always the case that human capital is the right thing to invest in at the margin, right? It could be more profitable, better for society overall to invest in, some like physical capital rather than human capital. And corporations kind of have the incentive and knowledge to do that. And it's not clear the government has that.
Exactly. Investing into labor.
And that's why you want to enact the unrealized gains tax. That's why you want to enact capital gains tax. That's why you want to increase the minimum wage.
We're talking about corporate taxes. It may hurt the economy. It may hurt the producer surplus. There may be changes in the way they reinvest.
They also probably, corporate taxes almost certainly do raise prices as well, so they're influence consumer surplus as well. But
reinvest in the American people. That's the Democrat position.
That's not how it works. It's really bad. You even admitted earlier.
And certainly over the longer run, insofar as they, limit how many new investments are made and how many like new goods there are for consumers, are going to hurt in a more abstract way consumer surplus. I don't actually know. I think that is counted as a type of consumer surplus, right? Is the like entry of new products and such. I'm more familiar with consumer surplus in like a static model, obviously, but I meant like you can still have consumer surplus in a dynamic model where there are new products introduced and such, right? Like that'd be counted.
You're not letting me finish now because you want to cut me off.
You brought up studies, you haven't fucking read, right? Nothing.
You admitted earlier that it's not the best for revenue growth.
You're saying it's devastating.
No, to be more precise, it's correlated and leads to negative
growth.
growth. No, this is what I mean.
Do you agree?
What I mean by devastating, and I would have clarified it if you didn't cut me off. What I mean by devastating is that it's correlated with long-term negative economic growth. Everyone agrees with that. Obama was running on a corporate tax rate cut. When he was running in 2012, he ran on a corporate tax rate cut.
Okay, listen, I can agree that some of our policy probably wasn't best practice, and again, I think that revenue can be generated through other means.
You think it's better than Trump's?
Because wait, okay, if you think corporate taxes are bad for long-term growth, what the fuck are unprecedented tariffs on every single fucking trading partner?
Very bad, but what we've seen is
which it is also relevant, tariffs on a lot of intermediate goods almost almost equivalent to a type of corporate tax. You are just taxing a lot of the capital goods that companies import.
We saw contraction in the first quarter of this year.
Plus the uncertainty from them, right? There would not be like substantial uncertainty from just like a legislated increase in the corporate tax rate. There's a lot more uncertainty when Trump has like unilateral control over the tariffs, and people don't know which ones are actually going to come into effect and which ones are going to be struck down and how long they're going to last and what deals are going to be made next.
Trump took office, he inherited 2.9% inflation rate, and almost every month, barring 2 months, kept it below that.
All right,
At 2.9%.
no, give me a fucking break. Stop. So listen, the reason why I voted for
Also, just talk about the well-identified evidence with regards to whether or not tariff raise prices. Why do we have to do? What do we have to do? I'm just going to look at a time series graph of inflation under each president, dog.
Harris isn't because she's an economist. It's because the rule of law, American institutions, and this country's future
Okay, so
is
you're
at
not
risk,
because
which is exactly why
you're
you're
voting for
not
Kamala
talking
Harris,
about
not because of the economy, but because of other issues.
She would have been good fiscal
Well, last
policy.
thing I
It
just
would
want
have
to
been
say
for
is
the
last thing I
economy.
just want to say is this: Donald Trump got us $8.2 trillion in debt in his first go around. That's
COVID
the guy.
pandemic?
Hold on.
Not all of it was COVID-related,
That's
believe.
the guy.
That's not true.
That's the guy.
By the way, I agree that the highest amounts of government spending is bad, and that's one of the things.
Hold on.
Oh my God,
I don't
they're
think
gonna
that-
raise the debt
if you look
ceiling
at-
by. Are
if
you
you look at
serious?
unemployment, if you look at
What
inflation,
was Donald
if you look
Trump's
at
fiscal year
real GDP
2027 budget
growth,
request for the military? $1.5 trillion at the expense of programs to help the average fucking person.
The last thing I will say.
It's so horrible.
Hey,
Increase it. It went
just
to
I think
5%
the last thing.
I think to some degree that's true of the Big Bill and of his whatever budget request, but it's just I get the progressive slot meme vibes from that. So
The last thing I will say, because we want to get some more people up here, is this. Sir, with all due respect, Kamala Harris is not economically illiterate. You are. Have a nice day.
You haven't given
Have a
you
nice
haven't given
day.
a single
true, owned, destroyed.
good
Have a nice
policy.
day, Mr.
Get
Get out of here,
Illiterate.
America.
You're
Listen,
illiterate
it needs to be
You're
part-
illiterate. Have a nice
Support it
day.
right now. Get him out of here. Get your other two PSA guys. Come on.
They kicked him out. Horrible, horrible. I could probably talk to him if I wanted to, but it'd be the same as that Andrew Holmes conversation, I think. And I don't mind doing that. Everything I like doing that, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure I want to do that much right now. We'll watch. Yeah, we can finish watching the Nathan Robinson stuff, and then I probably got to go after that. But I will actually stream again tomorrow. I finished most of the schoolwork I was behind on. I got locked out of my fucking school account, like I think I told you guys before. So I was behind a bit, but I pumped out some incredible, really my highest quality work today.
Revolution is usually dated to. So the book is really about industrial capitalism, but I'm not saying this was something completely new because there was mercantile capitalism before that. So one of my...
Yeah, we watched a little bit of this first section.
The second critic in the book is Adam Smith.
Yeah, people might be surprised to have him included in...
I remember the quote sniping at Adam Smith. I love it. Yes. Hold on real quick. I gotta see. I gotta check real quick if my biology teacher responded to my email about getting a fucking extended due date for some shit.
Talk about critics of capitalism, because he actually wrote The Wealth of Nations, which unfortunately comes out in 1776, so it's all sort of matched up with the start of my book. He says in the introduction to Wealth, he wrote this book as an attack on the mercantile system, as an attack on mercantile capitalism, which is sort of protectionist, monopolistic, sort of capitalism Donald Trump's trying to resurrect as we speak. Adam Smith was a big defender of free market.
Low-key true, though. That part, though, low-key true. This is true. Trump does want to nationalize or own stock in a lot of industries that he does. We have bought fucking golden shares in Intel and some mining companies, and obviously he's very, very, very protectionist. Okay.
We need protection, tariffs, etc. Free trade will deliver all these goods that we're getting from all over the world anyway. He didn't say we didn't need slavery. You could hire all the workers on the open market. So my first two critics, as I say, are critics of the previous form of capitalism.
No, yes,
on industrial capitalism, and I acknowledge this is a history rather than a sort of political tract. I try to be fair, and one of the first, there are only two charts in the book.
I'm interested in seeing if he addresses the splinter paper in the video. I'm predicting that we are going to pissed off to his response. So probably
chart, which I think is in chapter 1 or 2, which shows how GDP wealth.
I think that's a very safe prediction.
Basically, is flat until from the year dot until 1800, and then takes off like a hockey stick.
Yes,
gone up.
Nothing for most of human history, and then suddenly the explosion.
Exactly.
Although that is a point, and that is a chart that Karl Marx wouldn't necessarily have disputed.
No, that's what I mean. Marx, of course, one of the things Marx recognized was the productivity of capitalism. The debates have never been about whether capitalism is a productive system. Well, not even among the sort of orthodox left and right. It's been about the sort of failures and contradictions that come along with that enormous growth that we've had. Things like inequality, poverty, worker exploitation, consumer exploitation, etc. These
I'm thinking poverty probably a little higher when there was that no growth.
these themes recur throughout the system.
Certainly, at the very least, the absolute like quality of life of people in poverty has gone up. People, I mean, essentially everyone was in poverty when we were all like subsistence farmers, right? Like that is essentially what poverty kind of means. Nowadays, even people in poverty have fucking smartphones and shit.
And even as if you just look at the chart, you think, well, we're getting richer and richer and richer.
And obviously, that's a much lower percentage of society today than it is than it was back then. Although he might have some disagreements with that and how we measure that, I would imagine.
It's always been a contested system from the very first day until today.
It is kind of fascinating when you dive into the lives and ideas of these figures that you discover. Many of them are complex. That Adam Smith, in an intro to economics textbook, Adam Smith would be presented as the exponent of free market capitalism, Karl Marx as the critic, but then you have Karl Marx paying tribute to capitalism's great productivity, and you point out, as you said, that Adam Smith is, in your phrase, a noted critic of capitalism as well as its greatest philosopher, criticizing colonialism, as you say, deeply suspicious of individual business owners as well as merchant capitalist enterprises. I mean, he has phrases about,
like, I shouldn't be nice. It's just retarded. Obviously, by most people's understanding, it is like more capitalist to have competition in industries rather than like what Adam Smith was against or whatever, which they will argue is mercantilism, capitalism, or whatever, related to capitalism and necessitated by capitalism. Then have like state chartered companies like the East Indies, like colonizing certain places, and then essentially having a state granted monopoly on those on the resources there, right? Like Adam Smith was against that by nature of it, like not being capitalist. He didn't really, obviously Adam Smith is not going to have the same type of conceptions about what capitalism means as we do today, but he was against it by nature of it not being competitive, by nature of it not being a free market.
The way in which the master,
I don't know, like who gives it, like, Adam Smith said things that were right. He was an important figure, obviously. He also said things that were wrong. Like who gives that much of a fuck? Like Adam Smith is has some philosophical point about the negatives of capitalism or whatever. Nowadays we probably have better identified empirical evidence. Even philosophy has gotten more advanced or whatever. It's not that none of those points could be debated or anything, but we got something better.
Mankind, I think he calls them, are always trying
I don't give a fuck about Adam Smith. Yeah, exactly.
For themselves. That make him sound like, parts, if you isolated those parts, you might think he was a socialist.
Well, you couldn't think he was Lena Khan.
Yeah, you can quote snipe them. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Him and Lena Khan would have
You can quote snipe any other fight. You can quote snipe Marx. You can quote snipe any John Locke or any philosopher in the 1800s who has written a billion pages. You can make them anything you want to be. Okay, you see this all the time, with people on different sides claiming that the old historical figure actually supported them.
Right, because as you said, he has a famous phrase about you never see more than three businessmen getting together and they sort of conspire to raise prices. He saw business as sort of a necessary, not necessary even, but...
Wait, sorry.
That make him sound like, parts, if you isolate...
would have got along great, because as you said, he has a famous phrase about you never see more than three businessmen getting together and they sort of conspire to raise prices. He saw business as sort of a necessary, not necessary even, but as innately sort of having monopolistic tendencies if it wasn't controlled. He's not the proponent of sort of corporate capitalism. He's a proponent of free markets, free market competition. His famous descriptions of pin factories and how the butcher defends on 50 different people for his living. He sees the market and competition as the sort of the great driving positive forces. And he thinks people at all sides, governments, colonial monopolies, and I'm sure if we came back today, sort of internet monopolies, sort of frustrating the workings of the market.
I mentioned...
I'm not certain how Adam Smith would analyze natural monopolies. I think internet companies are very likely to always just kind of be natural. Or sorry, not always, but with the current technology, they're kind of going to be natural monopolies just because of the high fixed cost. And we do... there are both economic and legal barriers to entry. A lot of cities kind of have a lot of restrictions on what ISPs can even enter their market or whatever. In the long run, though, actually, it's an interesting thing to think about. That that's probably going to not be as much of an issue when we have more like Starlight, right? Like it is already. Starlight is affecting traditional ISPs, and it is a serious thing you can do to get Starlight and rely on a bunch of satellites rather than a physical ISP connection from the ground. A lot of developing countries rely on Starlight, to my understanding, and in the US today, if you're in a rural area, it might be your like genuine best option. I still think my understanding is it's never going to be as good as like if you live right next to the fucking not data center, to the fucking servers. Probably not going to be ever as good as that ground connection, but you know,
they're the multitudes contained within Adam Smith and Karl Marx. And it seems that another kind of complexity that comes out of your book is that the criticisms of capitalism are both simple and consistent, and also diverse and complex. You say in the book, the simple indictment of capitalism has
I'm so intellectually stimulated right now. That was so my mind is blown.
Remarkably consistent across the hundreds of years and many continents that you trace it over. You say it's soulless, it's exploitative, it's inequitable, unstable, destructive, yet also all-conquering and overwhelming. We can detect that theme, that thread throughout the thinkers of the book. But at the same time, the many, many thinkers of the book are all bringing in very kind of diverse, not all criticism of capitalism is the same. There are so many different flavors of it.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I think you're exactly right. What I tried to... it's a narrative. It's not just a collection of different things. I didn't want it to be just sort of encyclopedia entries.
I agree. It is a narrative.
Pull the narrative together are the sort of these themes, these critical themes which run through the book. And they come back in all sorts of different guises. They don't necessarily come back, in the same guise. I mean, a classic example of this is one other early set of critiques are the Luddites in northern industrial England. It was sort of the first mass protest movement against industrial capitalism. And, Luddites for the last 200 years basically been a term of abuse to call somebody a Luddite, basically saying they're anti-modernity, anti-technology, etc. And stupid. Now suddenly, people say, well, maybe they weren't so stupid after all when they see the threats of AI, and it's not just for manual workers.
Oh my God!
Like us with
yes, I agree. There are too many Luddites today.
The editors and writers.
But there's always been people. It's been used as an insult precisely because there's always been people like that against the technological change and stuff. That is the insult we use to call them stupid. Now I think probably more people are concerned with AI because if you really can make AGI, it can probably automate substantially more than past technologies could, but
white collar jobs, you suddenly think, well, maybe the Luddites had a point. So that's the sort of technological displacement is a theme that runs throughout capitalism. And again, it shows the sort of Janus face nature of the system. On one side, it's a very positive thing because technology brings higher productivity, which is the basis of economic growth and sort of wealth and living standards over the long term. But it can be incredibly destructive in the short term if you're on the sharp end of it. And
wow, shocking! Wow, have economists ever considered this?
That's what we saw in the Luddites, but you also saw it in industrial America. Saw that in sort of automation in the 80s and 90s, and then if you add sort of globalization on top of that, which was technologically enabled, you see the sort of destructive sides as well as the productive.
Now, the structure of your
now, can we ever? Maybe there's some types of theoretical models that we could think about that maybe we could determine whether or not it's a net benefit or not, and whether or not it raises total surplus, and then maybe we could even calibrate that model to real world data, or maybe we could just look at the real world data itself and try to determine the effect of certain technologies or paradigms, policies on total welfare. Maybe that's the thing we can do. And it overwhelmingly suggests that it is. Globalization was a positive. Most technological change was a positive.
Your book is you build it around people. I mean, each chapter focuses on an economist or a journalist or a revolutionary who either some of them were ultimately people who defended the capitalist system but incorporated criticism. Some of them were people who wanted to overthrow every aspect of our economic life. But let me ask you, so what did you feel that we get out of this people-centric rather than idea or statistic-centric way of understanding the history of capitalism?
Dog.
There's probably two answers to that. Number one, I have worked in the New Yorker for 30 years, which is very much a narrative-driven magazine. People always say, how can I get a piece in the New Yorker? And I always tell them, you have to have a story to tell. A theme is not enough, or an idea. It's all narrative. So I've been trying to turn sort of complicated.
I think that's good for selling to a general audience, right? And I think that's how you get clicks, how you get people to buy your books or whatever. I don't think that's good for serious criticism or serious academic work. Why would I ever take that stuff to be more meaningful than what I feel is much better identified, much better tested, much better, much more robust empirical evidence that we have, or just even theoretical models. I don't think it's bad to rely on theoretical models necessarily where you don't have a bunch of empirical data or whatever. Why would I don't like the narratives. I'm against the narratives. I'm anti-narrative is narrativization.
Economic ideas into narratives for 30 years. That's what I do for a living. So it was sort of natural for me to adopt this.
I wrote the little intro to a blog post that all my blog post, good chance it never comes out or whatever. I think when you really one of the points in it, when you really look into stuff, I think a lot of the debates about stuff like wealth inequality, about like intergenerational mobility, about like falling competition or like rising markups or whatever, a lot of it just kind of reduces down to like assumptions and like not necessarily definitions, but what kind of definitions, like what counts as income, right? Or what government transfers like count as income, like what we include in the definition of income. Essentially, it has fallen to those like narrow claims that I just think are like impossible to like narrativize in the same way. Like I think if people were more clear about that, you would see a lot less of like, well, the issue is people don't want that. They're never going to be, it's never going to be interesting to people, and people just can't people cannot be expected to understand everything, obviously. So it makes sense why a lot, some subset of people are going to understand the disputes over, Piketty, Sias Zuckman, and David Splinter, and how essentially the distribution of unreported income, how sensitive their estimates of income inequality are to that, right? Not everyone could be expected to understand that. But it's just like, you really get into it. I don't think it's like impossible to like create the narratives that people do when they just like read the conclusions of the paper. Like, yeah, I'm currently reading the John Cochrane paper, and yeah, defining and measuring wealth is already hard enough. Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, it's like you can't really like you can create this like big narrative out of like fucking, oh my god, wealth inequality is going up a bajillion trillion %, and the rich are so evil, and we can look at Adam Smith say how inequality is bad and whatever, and then like you look into like the actual debate over like wealth inequality, and it's like, fucking, what is the capitalization rate that we should use for the wealthiest? It's like you just like can't create the same like narrative of it.
And then secondly, I had a sort of bit of a role model in mind. There's a famous book written in the middle of the 20th century called Worldly Philosophers by Bob Heilbronner about the great thinkers of history. And he adopted a biographical novel, approach, and I think it made it a lot easier to read, especially for non-economists. How many other economics books are still in print after 70 years? His is. So it seems to me, that I didn't obviously just want to read
Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell still is.
read what Bob did. But it seemed like that was a sort of good model. But he basically just did the great thinkers, so there's only sort of half a dozen or so in the book. This is a much more kaleidoscopic attempt.
That's a good word for it. Because
it does follow the sort of narrative of capitalism. They start out very narrowly in sort of England, taking you through the Industrial Revolution, and then Marx and Engels arrive in England. There's one little detour across the channel to do Flora Tristan. But that's because that was the core of the capitalist system then. Then as capitalism becomes, industrial capitalism sort of globalizes, I shift across the Atlantic to sort of cover a couple of figures from, the great industrialization of the US, which, was basically sort of their China.
Like Ronald Reagan.
Was the China of the world economy. And then from there, sort of the 20th century, capitalism goes really global, and, it basically becomes a history of global.
Say his name.
Hi, sorry to interrupt, but if you like...
Oh, they got fucking sponsorships in this shit?
...channel for more wonderful...
Oh, he's just telling us to subscribe, okay.
Magazine world, as I mentioned, you go to you take us to ideas in many continents here. You take us to Latin America. We hear perspectives from Jamaica, from former Soviet states, so these neglected figures who don't necessarily appear in. I mean, I've
the BIPOC criticism of capitalism.
Plenty of people in this book that you devote whole chapters to that I had never heard of. Who you're introducing us to for the first time.
I've never heard of some of them before I started the research. I deliberately wanted to, for narrative reasons, to have a sort of a diverse bunch. Some people you know, some people you don't know, just because that makes a better book. But also, I thought it fit with the sort of narrative structure well. I mean, let me give you a couple of examples. I had to sort of deal somehow with the whole Soviet socialist model, and I didn't just want to write another sort of history of Lenin, which has been done a million times. So I picked Nikolai Kondratiev, who was an economist during the Russian Revolution, and played a significant role in that. So you can tell the story of the sort of Russian Revolution through him. He was sort of involved in all debates about whether the Soviets, how socialistic it should be, whether it should be decentralized or whatever. But he also came up with a theory which has got global sort of appeal, and is sort of why people still remember in this theory of long waves, that capitalism doesn't just have short cycles, it also has long cycles of sort of 50 years driven by technology, and they're called K-waves. Joseph Schumpeter, a conservative economist, picked up that from Kondratiev, and he introduced Kondratiev to the world, really, in the 1930s. So I thought, he's a forgotten thing.
Whoa.
The idea of sort of long-term waves is still a very powerful way of looking at capitalism. That was one. And then...
I mean, what am I supposed to really take away from that? I don't really...
Is J.C. Kumarappa. And because I had to deal with decolonization, obviously, colonial capitalism and the end of it, or the sort of decolonization. And rather than doing sort of Gandhi or Nehru, who again have been done a million times, I happened on Kumarappa, who was Gandhi's economist at the time. He was known as Gandhi's economist, and actually went to live in one of his ashrams. But started off as an accountant and actually did a degree in Columbia University when he was young, and then became a great prophet of sort of. He was basically the Indian when they achieved independence followed the sort of big industrial push model, the sort of Stalin. They didn't go as far as Stalin, but it was heavy industry was the basis of the first. They had 5-year plans and they had sort of heavy industry. Kumarapa didn't agree with that at all. He was in favor of small scale village based industries, and he sort of became completely forgotten because obviously the country didn't go in that direction. So he died as a sort of obscure.
He's just like localist party for real. Where's localist at? He would love that guy.
But he's been resurrected now by the sort of degrowth movement, people in the degrowth movement, and he's sort of
oh no
sustainability and sort of a low carbon emission economy. So again, that's a sort of way that a theme which cropped up.
It's not even the way he phrased it. It's not even clear that that would lower carbon emissions.
Based industries, and he sort of became completely forgotten because obviously the country didn't go at all. He was in favor of small scale village based industries, and he sort of became completely forgotten because obviously the country didn't go in that direction. So he died as a sort of obscure man. But
like because of comparative advantage and because of economies of scale, it's not necessarily clear to me that small scale local production of things would even be like beneficial for the environment on net, considering it's going to take more resources, it's going to take more time to do those things, and that has a direct cost in terms of resources, and then also the opportunity cost in making us less productive overall. That could slow potentially innovation that makes the climate greener, right? And then it just generally probably my understanding the Kuznets curve, right, is decently robust. The idea that this sort of inverted U relationship between GDP per capita and carbon emissions. So like very rich countries actually see like decreasing carbon emissions per unit of output or whatever. So insofar as you're like in the middle of the Kuznets curve, switching to that model probably slows your transition to an economy on the right side of the Kuznets curve.
He's been resurrected now by the sort of degrowth movement, people in the degrowth movement, and he's sort of hailed as a prophet of sustainability and sort of a low carbon emission economy. So again, that's a sort of way that a theme which cropped up in the early debates in India, and it's only 100 years later it seems to have resonance again, because obviously on the left now, I would say especially among young people, it's not the Soviet model as young leftists. I think it's much more a sort of degrowth, sustainability, environmentalist driven model, and somebody like Kumarapa has got more to say about that than somebody like Marx, for example.
We're talking here about how your book doesn't just run through the pantheon of the great economists or the legendary
oh my god,
but also brings us new or old voices from, for example, from the global south, people like Kumarapa, people like Eric Williams, but also your book has a number of profiles of women who have contributed to the criticism of capitalism over time.
Yes, feminist criticism, yes.
The first socialist feminist, Flora Tristan, Joan Robinson, Silvia Federici. Can you tell us about the contribution?
Well, are there any specifically BIPOC trans women in it? I need to know.
To the building of criticism of capitalism.
I was very keen to have a representative. It's not 50.
I need to performatively create a feminist literature section of my Zotero page. I'd have to pirate books from female authors, so I don't know if I can do that.
50, which I guess it should be in some ways. But there are two things. One, economics as a subject has really left women out for a very long time. Joan Robinson, who you mentioned, is probably the most famous female economist of the 20th century. She was.
Has it? Like fucking God, what's his name? The utilitarian dude, John, fucking utilitarian dude. I'm tired. I can't remember his name. Oh my god. John Stuart Mill. Like he was a big advocate for the liberation of women, and he was also like some type of early economist. He wrote about economics, right? I think he even wrote about specifically the role women could contribute to the economy. I'm thinking the right guy, right? I'm tired. Fucking John Stuart Mill. Yeah, philosopher and political economist. Okay, and pretty 1806 to 1873. Woman. He advocated political and social reforms such as proportional representation, the emancipation of women. Co-authored the early feminist work, The Subjugation of Woman. Also found the second member of parliament to call for women's suffrage.
Sort of scandalously passed over for a Nobel Prize. But economics departments, both sides of the Atlantic, have been overwhelmingly male for as long as I can remember. I've been to sort of 4 or 5 different universities and studied economics there, and they're all overwhelmingly male.
I mean, that's true, but I think that's probably true of most social sciences until recently. I don't know if that's unique to economics.
Yeah, and that's true going back through the centuries. So I wanted to try and redress that balance a bit. But then the second half of it is women have always played a fundamental role in capitalism too. In the first industrial factories in Northern England,
But what's even a woman?
there were more women employees than men. It was largely women.
Economists can't answer this question.
They could tend the sort of machinery. It didn't need to be skilled artisans as such. So they were, and again, same thing in the textile factories in Massachusetts.
I think I read in here, I could be mistaken, but Tyler Cohen wrote a book, Who's Go to Economics or whatever. I think he talks about John Stuart Mill. I could be mistaken, but I recall him mentioning in here that Mill, like, specifically, he's mentioning here, like, data relate, like the emancipation of women to benefits of the economy. Step 1 in the case for Mills, he wrote an excellent tract on a woman in the economics of gender discrimination, namely, okay, yeah, I'm right. I'm always right. Never doubt myself. Namely, the subjugation of women in 1869. To state the obvious, women are more than half of humanity. And to state another one, slightly less obvious fact, among the other Go contenders, only Malthus gives woman any consideration at all. Not only did Mill consider the topic a woman, but virtually everything he claimed turned out to be true and insightful, even though it was a highly controversial at the time. It's one of the best and most important original books in the 19th century. Not usually thought of economic track, but it obviously is. The notions of social science mechanisms and causal inference can be found on virtually every page. I'll be returning to that later on. Focusing on secondary consequences, thinking in terms of bargaining power, applying insights from what we now call behavioral economics. Anyway, the original feminist. Actually, Bethan was a feminist before him, but he didn't write about economics that much, to my understanding. So,
which I mentioned briefly. So women have always played a role in capitalism itself. Then their sort of participation went down. But women are still bringing up the family. Who's raising the workers? Who's reproducing the labour stock? It's women, and that's the basis of. You mentioned Sylvia Federici, the wages for housework movement, which started in New York in the 1970s, and then it actually started in Italy, but the most famous chapter was founded in New York, and then it spread sort of globally. And their whole critique was based on domestic reproduction, domestic labour, and unpaid labour, saying that housework deserved to be paid just as much as factory work, because there's one of the famous precursor theorists who I mentioned of feminism in the 40s protested at a Firestone factory, saying you can't run your factory if I'm not at home looking after your workers' kids and reproducing the next generation. That was a very powerful critique. It's true. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
Shocking.
So, as I said, I tried to,
I just know, literally kind of as like the opportunity cost of doing that, right, increases of like not working in a factory, right, and staying home and taking care of the kids, like insofar as the opportunity cost of that increases because of like rising productivity, we've seen more people, send their kids to daycare instead of doing all the home labor, right? I think my understanding, but this is from certified non-fun hardcore knowledge from King of the Coast tweets here. Okay, so I've not read the stuff myself. I don't put a ton of confidence in it because of my understanding that it's the data. It's not easy to measure this type of data, and it's not easy to measure this type of data across countries. And like I said, King of the Coast tweet here. My understanding is like Americans do a lot less like home labor or unpaid labor, uncompensated labor from that than Europeans tend to do.
That was a deliberate effort on my part to try to have much more representation of women in the book.
It's kind of cool that instead of a chapter on Lenin, you have a chapter on Rosa Luxemburg.
Right, again. I sort of started doing a chapter on Lenin, and I realized, there's just been so much written about him. And actually, Lenin as a writer, I mean, I did do a section on his book, Imperialism, Stage of Capitalism. But I think Lenin, he was a great political revolutionary, a great political leader. But his actual, even though he was lionized by the Soviets, his actual theoretical contribution, I think, was largely sort of based on the work of others. His theory of imperialism being a classic example. I mean, he cites extensively the work of John Hobson, British liberal theorist, who I have a separate chapter on. So I thought, well, I don't want another chapter on Lenin. So then I thought Rosa Luxemburg, another sort of neglected figure. And she's fascinating because she's one and at the same time, a fervent all-out revolutionary who ends up paying with her life for her revolutionary activities, being killed by the sort of Freikorps after World War I in the Spartacist Rising in Germany. But she was also a very high quality, very deep thinker about economics. She wrote a very dense book called The Theory of the Accumulation of Capital, arguing that Marx in the original Capital had left out, had made a major mistake in his sort of economic system, and that there was a sort of sector missing in his model, and this sector was the imperialist sector, the sort of overseas. That she made the argument that capitalism
God.
without endless.
Kenny Coates needs to start posting on Substack. I know, it's true.
In very dense theoretical terms. So she was sort of, she was in some ways the ideal figure, narratively speaking.
Seems like he's too much of a... I mean, I don't know for certain. I get the impression he's too much of a perfectionist because I know he's written... Like, I know he's written like drafts of a blog posts about like sovereign wealth funds, but he just like doesn't think they're good enough to release or anything. So one day.
She represents the theoretical dispute.
He's also probably... I mean, he has a fucking job. I bet he's probably pretty fucking busy, but...
And she also played, a first-hand role in a revolution.
You mentioned Kumarapa as an example of someone that most people might not have heard of, who's worth engaging with. We also talked about Adam Smith as someone who everyone has heard of, but whose work contains insights that are often left out. Are there any other people who we might have heard of, but in the course of your research, you found, rich and interesting sides of their work, dimensions that we, excited you?
I think Marx himself is a good example of that. I mean, I'd written about Marx, I remember writing about one of my first essays I did for the New Yorker in the 1990s was a piece about Marx and globalization. So I knew the sort of broad outlines of it.
Oh, no.
I hadn't really studied him closely. And I think what surprised me most about him is he was in his in his writings, also in his private letters, he was much more sort of a nuanced arguer and theorist than he's given credit for. For example, everybody thinks of Marx as a theorist who had this sort of theory of surplus value, the theory of the proletariat as the working class. It's a sort of inevitable model which is going to come around. But actually, if you go back and read Capital and don't just read the famous chapters, which everybody does, there's actually a lot of empirical research in there. He sat in the British Museum every day, and there's one set of passages which I recorded.
I'm familiar with Marx, like, interviewing factory workers and such, but and like doing some surveys of their workers. I'm not familiar with him doing stuff beyond that, although to be fair, during his time, your ability to do empirical research is kind of limited.
Well,
not many data sets existed back then,
He has a sort of section, after he's laid out the great theories, he says, well, how does it look like in practice? And he has these sort of tables of British wealth distribution, income distribution in the 1860s, which in a way are sort of a precursor.
Yeah, I have no clue. I have no clue how you would
much more sophisticated way, but
get reliable data on that during that time, but I'm not familiar. I'm just not familiar with that, although, I bet he's not like outright lying or anything about that existing.
Same basic idea, how much of the income is going to the very rich. And Marx had that 150 years ago. More than 150 years. So that was surprising to me. It was a more nuanced and sort of empirical figure.
Which even Thomas Piketty didn't realize, because I think when Capital in the 21st Century came out, he said he didn't read the original Capital and it didn't have any data in it.
Well, nobody does. I mean, I did. That's the thing. Nobody. One of the things, if this book's got any strengths, I would say. I mean, my defense of it would be, I do actually go to the primary text.
Yeah.
I studied Marxist economics when I was younger. But, I did it through the lens of sort of Schaffer and people. So actually, he didn't actually read any Marx. And that's what Piketty did. He read the sort of derived theories. He didn't read the original.
No, there's so much that you get. I mean, I've had this too. I think it's so exciting when you go back to.
I mean, I can't find it. I know it's outright lying though.
Go and actually read the book.
Well, if people look at your endnotes, they'll find that they're very repetitive because you're just citing the original thinker over and over and over, right? Luxemburg.
I mean, people say what's the main source for the book. The main source are the books of the people I wrote about.
Yeah.
And I had to fill in obviously all the biographical details around it.
Sure.
There, I obviously relied on secondhand biographies. I tried to source everything I did. But yeah, the actual original research here, such as it is mainly going and actually reading the books and trying to pick out what I thought was interesting.
Now, an important point here that also comes across is that you don't have to be a socialist to be a criticism of capitalism. Your book isn't a history of socialist ideas. It's a history of capitalism and its critics. And there can even be right-wing criticisms of capitalism. And you have a chapter on Thomas Carlyle who, gives very...
Is this the stuff we want to entertain? Do we want the right-wing critics of capitalism to be more popular? I thought half the point of fighting capitalism and liberalism to get rid of because it's fucking liberal to fascism pipeline and shit.
Sorry,
I forgot though. Fascism actually is just capitalism. Because they're serving the interests of capital and
of the
yada yada yada.
All-powerful role of money, but is also a racist who believes in strict social hierarchies. So,
proto-fascist who believe in strongmen. Yeah, I mean, I tried. I always think there's a danger if you write a sort of history like a book like this, it's all going to be from the left. So obviously the bulk of criticism of capitalism has come from the left, so the book reflects that. But I wanted to try and include some conservative things. I mean, I think maybe I didn't do enough, but I did do a few of them.
Liberalism leads to fascism. Remember? Yeah, like I said,
it's a very prominent example.
Obviously.
And towards the end of the book, where I had to address the sort of current, situation, I also tried to. Reference some of the thinkers, in the sort of right-wing economic nationalist movement, the sort of American compass types, who were sort of questioning globalization from a sort of perspective which 20 years ago would have been associated with the left. So the critiques of the moral critique of capitalism. I mean, I would say Carlyle's main criticism is a moral critique. He thinks it's he says mammon. They used to call it the pursuit of.
Does the book at least have Orin Cassade in it? Can we? Does it at least have Orin Cassade in it? That's all. Then it's a good book.
He says mammon is
all I
the
need.
happiest gospels ever taught to man. I mean, he sounds a bit like sort of Jesus Christ running the sort of moneylenders out of the temple. So that sort of moral critique has been there through the right. Now, it went away in, I would say, the second half of the 20th century when right-wing conservatism became associated with neoliberalism, really, Hayek and Friedman. They were making the opposite argument, a moral argument for capitalism. I think that's taken a bit of a hit in the last 20 or 30 years, a big hit.
But it's important in part to help us understand that if there's a crisis of capitalism, that doesn't mean there'll necessarily be a rush to embrace egalitarian and left-wing thinking.
No, well, I mean, the history, another important thinker in that regard is Polanyi, Karl Polanyi, Austrian theorist who I have a chapter on. And Polanyi was, grew up in Hungary and Vienna and was in the sort of...
I was worried we were going to get the meme, which I don't think there's I think there's some truth to this meme. That oh, fucking capitalism is gonna leave people fucking distressed and in poverty, and they're gonna revolt, and that's what radicalizes people to makes them that's what turns people into fascists and racists or whatever. And I think there's some limited kind of, you skipped it in a video. No, I didn't. What? We watched all this. Wait, this is still the right wing criticism. Isn't there a section of wealth inequality or something? Don't look like it. Because we watched the most ignored critics. We watched the right wing. We're still in the right wing critics or whatever.
Red Vienna in the 1920s.
There probably is some truth. People are probably more perceptibly radicalized when they're in poverty or poor or whatever. But also, we have, we have welfare states, and I think that is a potential justification for the welfare state, is that people might be more likely to be illiberal absent the welfare state existing. So.
It's a great socialist experiment. And but then Austria was taken over by the fascists, Dollfuss, etc., in the 1930s, and he fled to London and then moved over to the US, where he wrote his famous book, The Great Transformation. But anyway, in the 1930s, in some ways, it was a sort of more extreme version of what we've got now. Capitalism was sort of being attacked from all sides, and obviously, the fascism was rising. Polanyi wrote a series of papers saying that basically capitalism and democracy, they just don't go together. They're not stable in the long term. The only stable equilibrium is either fascism or socialism. So it's going to be totalitarianism of one sort, left wing.
Let's go.
He saw socialism in that sense as the sort of Soviet model at the time, and or the the right wing, Hitler, Mussolini.
I feel like that's just pretty empirically wrong. I think Tim Baruter has some blog posts about this. I think it's just we just observed that it is the case that democracies tend to be more internally stable than non-democracies, and tend to be, and even externally tend to be more stable
than 30s fascists.
As in democracies almost never go to war with each other, and then it's rarer that they go to war with non-democracies, although that's much more common than two democracies fighting.
Now, for 50 or 60 years, I'd say that seemed like a crazy argument in the sort of post-war era, where we had the sort of social democratic element. And, certainly when I grew up, the idea that capitalism and democracy were antithetical would be, was very difficult, very hard to take in. But now, who knows? We certainly got. You can see, if you're going to say where we're heading, we certainly seem to be heading towards sort of, authoritarianism more than we seem to be heading toward right-wing authoritarianism, more than we seem to be heading towards left-wing socialism.
As mentioned, the book is so rich with all of these debates about capitalism that have occurred over the hundreds of years of its development, and we don't have time to go into all of it. And the discussions around capitalism's effect on the environment, on unrestricted growth.
I got to start interviewing people with this. With this fucking this cadence and this body language.
Relationship between capitalism and slavery, between capitalism and colonialism. People are going to have to pick up your book, and they are going to have to read it in order to get a full sense of the range of these thinkers and the depth of these debates. So let's just conclude with a final note on what do you think that going back and revisiting all of these people, both known, unknown, both people who are canonical in economics and people who are almost totally forgotten outside of the pages of your book. What do you think it gives us today here in 2025 as we look at the global economy and try to think about its future?
Well, I think that's a very good question. I would say two things. I mean, this is not a book with a sort of one-line message that you can sum it up. But I think as a reader, I hope you get two things out of it. Number one, I hope it gives a framework for thinking about all the issues today. People get lost in the day-to-day headlines, especially around Trump or Europe.
Why? Well, why would I expect it to give me a framework? I feel like it gives you the opposite of a framework. It gives you the narratives.
etc. I'm trying to present what's happening now as a sort of epoch in capitalism, a crisis epoch in capitalism. And if you go back, you'll see we've been in them before. I think the most relevant period to study would be the interwar period, if you're looking at today. But the debates that we have about globalization, about inequality, about worker exploitation. Global warming or climate change is a bit of a different one.
But I understand it doesn't give you the framework to think about them. It might say that, like, you know, our debates we're having now, we've also had historically, and like thinkers have thought about them before, and at the very least, we, you know, the same ideas we have today kind of go along with, or, you know, rhyme with the ideas people had historically, but like it's not a framework for like actually thinking about the issues.
That's new, but a lot of
it's not a good one.
A lot of these debates, they go back for centuries. So I try to give you a framework to understand it. The second thing I would say is, if there's a sort of hopeful element in the piece, it's that capitalism seems to be sort of all conquering, but it's not immutable. You know, there are different forms of it that we can change. There was a form of managed capitalism in the sort of second half of the 20th century, which worked very well for a long time. And from my perspective,
source
sort of
also where
left person from center left, the challenge is to try.
Is Norway currently that managed form of capitalism or whatever?
And you know, resurrect that model in some way, or come up with a new sort of managed capitalism for the 21st century.
Well, I hope anyone who wants to understand our economic moment and the hundreds of years that led up to it will pick up capitalism and its in. And
thanks for watching. This video is a product of Current Affairs Mag.
Wow. Okay. I gotta go probably. I'm going to tell myself I'm going to edit a video, and then I'm going to play Kerbal Space Program instead. And I'm going to go to bed. Dude, my sleep schedule is incredibly fucking fucked right now. This whole podcast is a meme. Oh boy. Oh shit, I know these people. I had a suspicion it was actually going to be these fucking people. PopEcon people. I think I followed them just because or like, at least the main guy. Because I thought about reaching out to him, but he's just like way too popular and doesn't seem like the type that would do it even if they weren't popular. But yeah, I feel like I've seen these things. They're so horrible. Okay, well I would watch it, but it's a little broken, and I don't care right now. My schedule is fucked. My school is not as fucked anymore, but we'll see. But we should be chilling now, so I can stream again tomorrow, and you guys can head over to fucking Queeman. I don't know. Okay. Love streaming. Love you guys for my stream. I'll see y'all tomorrow. I don't think I have anything like planned or whatever, but you know, doing the econ memes, doing the stuff that you all know and love. See you guys later. Appreciate it. Love you guys.